That's the pledge. That's the pledge of allegiance. Yes. I think so.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us here in the council chamber, and thank you to everyone who's joining us via our BevCam stream right now, with our thanks also to Kim in the BevCam booth, who's making sure that that stream is happening and is accessible to folks who may be joining us wherever you are or watching this meeting later. So thank you, Kim, and thank you, BevCam. Thanks to everybody who's here in the chamber with us this evening. I do notice if this were a boat, we would be listing very sharply to this side. So folks, if you're watching and you're headed this way, when you come in, you're gonna wanna sit to the right-hand side from the back doors. But thank you, no matter where you're sitting in this room, thanks for being here with us. And thank you for following us through this budget process. Tonight is, of course, a meeting that has largely just one agenda item, and it is for a final discussion and vote from the City Council on the proposed FY27 budget. I typically like to run through what's on the agenda. That really is the main agenda item this evening, and this is the culmination of a month-long budget process. As folks know, the Subcommittee on Finance and Property has been meeting after receiving the proposed budget from Mayor Cahill at the beginning of June, and we've been meeting with department heads and going through the budget, having conversations. Last night had a public hearing on the budget with members of the public here speaking and in the chamber. And this evening, councilors, we have the opportunity to have our conversation and ultimately a vote on this proposed budget. So with that, I'll officially call to order this special meeting of the Beverly City Council, Tuesday, June 23rd, 2026, 6 o'clock p.m. Ms. Kent, will you please call the roll?
Crawley? Here. Feldman? Here. Houseman? Here. Milady?
Here.
Rotundo? Here. Sonia? Here. Spang? Here. St. Hilaire? Here. And Flowers.
Here. Thank you, Ms. Kent. Councilor St. Hilaire, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? And I'd ask that we remain standing for a moment of silence for former Beverly Mayor Jack Monahan, please. To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, Councilor St. Hilaire, for leading us in the pledge, and thank you everyone for taking that moment of silence. As I mentioned, it was an opportunity for us to take a moment of silence for former Beverly Mayor Jack Monahan, actually Frederick Jack Monahan. He died at the beginning of the month on June 9th. His family was with him at the time, and he's remembered, of course, for being a former mayor of the city of Beverly. He served in that capacity from 1984 to 1994. Before that, he also served as Ward 3 Alderman from 1975 to 1977 and our state rep from 1978 to 1982. And he was a Beverly Public Schools alum and is also remembered as being not only an excellent student during that time, but an outstanding student athlete. And so at a time when we've been thinking about all of the wonderful attributes of our community and the things that we hope for our schools, our students, our teachers, our educators, for all of our different city departments, what an appropriate time to take a moment of silence for someone who really gave so much to his community. And so thank you all for joining me in that moment of silence. Our thoughts, of course, are with his family and his friends, and our thanks for all of the public service, the many years of public service that he gave. So councilors, we will turn our attention now to consideration of the proposed FY27 budget. As I mentioned last night during the public hearing, when we were primarily gathered so we could receive comments from the public, this evening it is our opportunity to consider the budget together and to have a conversation about any of the thoughts, changes, amendments, proposals that councilors may be coming with. The way that we'll do this discussion together is how we've been doing it the past several years, but I'll just reiterate it for all of us to be on the same page and for those who may be following the process or for whom it may be newer. Councilors, if anyone has come either with something that you just have a prepared statement that you'd like to offer at the beginning or the ending of the process, I'm happy to have us do that. If you have come with any proposed cuts in mind to the budget, I ask that you make those cuts, make your proposal in the form of a motion. The motion then, if it receives a second, we will have time to discuss it, and then we will vote on each individual proposed amendment. If amendments pass, of course, they'll become part of what we will vote on at the end, and any amendments that don't pass will move to the next proposal that a counselor may have. So, is that good? Is everyone good with that? We're good with that, okay. I do know that we have many members of our city staff here with us, many department heads. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your work during this budget process, which of course precedes the presentation of the budget. You know, the departments were hard at work on what's in this budget book before we received it. And so I thank you for being here, and thank those of you who were here for your presentations with the Finance and Property Subcommittee as well. And I do note that we have at least one school committee member here, Ms. Visnick, standing for colleagues. I don't want to miss anyone. They're not here yet, but I don't want to be unfair and miss people. But School Committee President Linda Visnick, and so perhaps we could extend our thanks to the school committee through you as well for their work, your work on the budget. The school budget process, of course, takes place before the city budget process. Mr. Mayor, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to be able to say at the outset of the discussion this evening. I just would invite you if you wished to. Otherwise, we'll jump in up here.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to share just a couple of things, given that the last time I got to speak on the budget with you was June 1st, before any of the hearings took place. So just a quick. I just want to give you a couple of details on things that have come up, because there's been discussion of our two reserves, our cash reserves and our stabilization. I just want to make a note so that we all understand. We have collectively over the last many years really built strong reserves from zero to prepare and protect us in the event of a downturn economically. We've been incredibly fortunate that one hasn't happened in so many years, so I'll knock wood a bit. But a year ago at this time, our reserves equaled just about 20% of the FY26 budget. And as you remember, our financial policies call for our reserves to be between 13 and 23%. We project that our reserves today, or June 30th, when we close the books on FY26, with the proposed FY27 budget, our reserves will represent about 17% of our 27 budget. So in a year's time, our reserves have gone down by about 3%. This has been intentional as we've tried to address some of our needs. As you know, we've brought to you several free cash asks, and we project that free cash or cash reserves will rebound to about 8.3 million, where they were certified at 10.4 or 5, Brian? 10.4, thank you, Mr. Perry. 10.4 down to about 8.3 in a year's time. And where we did not bring to you a request to put 10% of this year's cash reserves into stabilization, then the stabilization account is just, it's kind of less than it was because the budget for FY27 is larger than the budget for FY26. So, there have been people who have pointed to those reserves and said we should be spending them today. Well, we've had to do so for a number of reasons, and I think they were the right reasons. And at the same time, we can't bleed away those reserves because we will need them to get through, whenever it happens, a 3-year recession. You always have to plan for that. The only other thing I want to make a point of is, as you folks, trying to figure out whether there are things that you feel the need to cut further than the budget that is before you, which we brought a budget to you that had a good number of reductions in spending across departments. And then when we saw that you were likely to approve the trash increase at the level that you ultimately did, we had to then come back with an additional 1.4 in reduction. So I would say to you that I think that we have done the work needed to balance the budget and deliver critical core services this coming year. That's one. And the other thing I want to ask is, please do not cut the line item that would allow us to give COLA increases to the non-union department heads, some assistant department heads, and some very important confidential employees in different departments. Many of them are here tonight. Not everybody could be. But that line is calculated to cover just about a 3% increase in a year when our unions across the city and schools will be getting anywhere from 3 to 4 and above 4% increases. And, you know, I spoke to you when I presented the budget about the fact that those contracts for our unionized employees are good contracts. They're strong contracts, they're fair, they're appropriate. So I just ask you to be sure that you think carefully about the fact that the people who are heading those departments up will be needing to deliver those critical core services and trying to get everything done that we need to get done with a little less to work with this coming year. And I ask you to keep that in mind, and hopefully you'll support that line item and see that through. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So councilors, to be able to open up conversation, I would first just take a motion on the main order. And then, as I said, we can either, if folks have statements that you'd like to make or proposals that you'd like to make in the form of a motion beneath that main motion. So I'll take a motion to approve Order 151. This is the proposed FY27 budget. Okay, so we have a motion and a second, which opens discussion of this order. Are there counselors who either would like to just be able to make a statement or have come with proposals that you'd like to make in the form of a motion? Counselor St. Hilaire, we'll go with you first, please.
Thank you, Madam President. I have both a brief comment and some amendments I'd like to make, so I'm not sure in which order you'd like to go through that, but maybe I could start with a brief statement.
Yes, and actually, Counselor St. Hilaire, before you jump in, maybe if there are other counselors who have a statement that you were hoping to make at the outset, if you could just let me know, because Counselor St. Hilaire, maybe if there's a few folks with statements, we'll then come back and start the process of taking motions. But if I could just have a sense, are there other folks who hope to make just a statement at the outset? And you may have one that you want to make at the conclusion, and that's okay too. Okay. Counselor St. Hilaire, why don't we go with your statement then, and any of your proposed, that you can form them as motions, and then we'll go to Counselor Hausman next. Although, Counselor Hausman, were you hoping to make an opening statement?
Yes, before we start on the actual motions for cuts.
Great, thank you. Counselor St. Hilaire, let's do your statement, Counselor Hausman's statement, and Counselor St. Hilaire, you're first in line for any proposals.
Thank you, Madam President. So I want to just start by thanking Mayor Cahill, Finance Director Brian Ailes, the Budget Analyst Jerry Perry, all you department heads. I know I've been critical of a lot of the policy decisions that have been made by the administration. That doesn't mean I don't respect you all as professionals and the work you do. I've worked in government positions very similar to all of yours and understand the challenges you all face. Also want to thank a lot of the residents who've reached out. It's been a pretty engaging process over the last several weeks. Had a lot of folks reaching out on social media, email, phone calls, texts, one-on-one discussions, and really appreciate a lot of the support I've received related to some of my positions on City Hall, the trash fee, the city budget. It's become pretty clear to me over the last few weeks that, you know, I may be in the minority on some of these issues among this group on the council, but there is an increasingly large constituency of folks out there who are fed up with the lack of transparency and respect that they see coming from the mayor related to the communication of the trash program, the trash fee, the budget deficit, City Hall project. They feel like they're not being heard, they're frustrated, you know, particularly that in the fact, in the face of this financial crisis, that we've chosen to just shift the burden to our residents through increased trash fees. And, you know, I thought Andrea Sherman last night, the Beverly Teachers Association, had some of the best comments of the public hearing when she was talking about how what we're doing and the way we've been operating just doesn't seem to be working, and maybe we need to rethink our roles as counselors and as a body, how we operate. I also want to say that I appreciate the discussion about courage and sort of what are we willing to do, and ask you all to think about this process. It's been many months. We've had hours and hours of discussion, and I hope the only thing we accomplish isn't just raising the trash fee by 3 times the rate. I hope we're able to go through this discussion tonight and make some more cuts. I have the opinion that city spending is unsustainable. I know some of you are eager to propose a property tax override, which in my opinion would just financially harm our residents even further. I think we have an obligation to go through this and control spending as much as we possibly can and to live within our means. I have 12 amendments tonight that seek to reduce the overall spending in the budget by $724,000 and $724,320. And again, you know, even though it's not our decision, I do ask that you join me in urging the mayor to cancel the City Hall project. That's another $2 million combined with my cuts that I'm proposing tonight. That would be $2.7 million that we could put back into this budget. In my opinion, that's misprioritized spending that could be better spent on reducing the impact of the trash fee, could be used to reduce some of the, or address some of the critical positions that we were cutting with the police and fire and our school budgets. Could reopen the hours in the Beverly Farms Library, that would be nice. And I just wanted to share in thinking about these cuts, they are focused on eliminating a lot of non-essential positions in the mayor's office, positions that have been added during the last 12 years. They are focused on eliminating the mayor's travel and expense line items. They are focused on eliminating or reducing outside consultants, freezing management salary increases. Not everybody gets a salary increase every year, and when things aren't going well, we all have to share the burden in eliminating the mayor's unbudgeted reserve for unforeseen. So I'll go through each of them one at a time. But I believe these are cuts that can be made and they don't impact city services. And these are things that we can do. $2.7 million would do a lot of good, in my opinion. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor St. Hilaire. Councillor Husman, we'll go to you for your statement, and then Councillor St. Hilaire, we'll go back to you, and then if other councillors have proposals, we'll go from there.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to echo my colleagues' thanks to first, all of our constituents, our residents who have turned out and engaged in this process. I know there's a lot of work to be done to try to understand the process, and I encourage everyone to continue educating themselves about how this process works. And then also I want to echo his comments related to the work of city and school staff. Everyone does a superlative job trying to deliver the best possible services to the city, and I think that is accomplished. I think next year's math problem will be much worse than this year's math problem. The mayor's proposed budget does make cuts on the city side up to 10 to 20% in some cases, and has recommended less than, proposed less than what was recommended by the school committee. I will support a number of reductions to the proposed budget, but make no mistake, to materially address next year's structural deficit, we would probably be having to make another $2 million in cuts this year. The mayor didn't have the appetite to do that this year. I don't know that the school, that the city council has that appetite either, by cutting either the school budget or closing down whole city-side departments. Even cutting the entire Council on Aging Recreation Department and closing the Beverly Farms Library would not get us there. But next year, I expect that is the math problem we're going to face. I think it's a fundamental misunderstanding and popular thing to say that we can and should stop the City Hall renovation project. Even Councilor St. Hilaire said last week, acknowledged last week, that it would be best practice to maintain the project, but we should cut it because we are facing an emergency. And so we should discard the best practices. If we were to do that, not only have we already spent or contracted $5 million of the taxpayers' money on the project that would go down the drain, there would also be a likely impact in the city's bond rating, a reduction that is, that could and would easily cost the city hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more than $1 million in increased borrowing costs as we go forward. And that is to say nothing of mostly eliminating the city's budget to undertake future capital expenditure projects. If we were to follow that course, that is where we would end up. It is exactly when the budget is under duress that maintaining financial discipline by holding to best practices is important. So a couple of suggestions, they're not going to be popular, as to what we could do to mitigate the FY28 structural deficit. So these are just some ideas that I'm sure we will be debating over the course of the next year. One, I encourage my school committee colleagues to raise the kindergarten fee. That could raise an estimated $800,000. Obviously, that's not going to happen in this fiscal year budget. Two, next year on the city side of the budget, instead of the year-over-year budget increases we've seen on the school side, I think very regrettably, we will need to see cuts on the school side. It's the third rail of Beverly politics to say that, but to do otherwise would see a decimation in city department eliminations. Of course, it's going to be up to the mayor to make those initial decisions about how to make those elections. But this is a break glass moment for city leadership. And I think as elected officials, we do no, elected representatives, we do no favors to our constituents to insist and act as though our math problem does not exist. Three, I think presently the city pays 80% of the premium for health insurance for city and school employees. And we have new new contract negotiations about to begin for many, if not most, of our unions. I think steps should be taken to reduce the city's contribution rate to lower than 80%. It is more generous than most municipalities throughout the state. Fourth, I don't think we can rely on new growth in our tax base to fund employment contracts for city employees going forward. I would urge the administration and all bargaining units to not bargain to exceed in salaries, if that's what it ends up being negotiated, not to exceed the limits of Proposition 2.5. And five, as elected city officials, we must advocate with state elected officials for their help. This past weekend, the superintendent and I seized an opportunity to meet with the lieutenant governor to do just that. We had a good dialogue, but we need to do more. And I encourage all of our colleagues and the mayor to continue to press our case urgently for increased state aid. It gives me no pleasure to sort of be the Darth Vader of budgetary approach, but I think we do a disservice if we don't really recognize the situation we are in and take urgent measures to address it. And I hope that as we have our discussions this evening about cuts or no cuts that we make, that we keep in mind the best practices that we have in our financial policies and objectives and stay with them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Houseman. Unless any other councillor has an opening statement, it seemed that no one else had an opening one. We'll come back around if folks have something to say at the conclusion. Councillor St. Hilaire, I'd like to come back to you and give you the first crack at any proposals that you'd like to make, and we'll take any councillors one at a time. As I mentioned, if you can make your proposal in the form of a motion, and then any motion that gets a second, we'll take discussion from there.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, I'd like to start with making a motion to amend line 51891 under Executive Department expenses, reduced from 13,500 to zero. This is a line item geared towards the mayor's travel and expenses. As I've stated many times previously, I just don't think it's appropriate for the mayor to be traveling out of state when, we're cutting police, fire, school positions. I've seen other towns that have ordinances related to out-of-state travel where they may require approval by the city council, and that's something I'm looking at introducing in the fall. But for now, I think we ought to zero this one out. I don't know how many residents we serve that are flying to Miami Beach and elsewhere. So, thank you.
So that's Councillor St. Hilaire's motion. Is there a second? Thank you. And Councillor St. Hilaire, you may not have this. Thank you for giving us the line item number. Do you happen to have the page in the budget book? It's fine if not. I just saw people flipping. Thank you. So is there any discussion? Councillor Houseman.
Yes, I also support cutting this budget, and if the Councillor St. Hilaire's motion fails, I will make a motion to reduce it by $3,500 to maintain $10,000 in the budget. I think it does perform a good functioning purpose for the mayor's staff, but I think it's responsible to cut something more out of it than has already been cut as proposed by the mayor. So I will oppose Councilor St. Hilaire's motion unless he would accept a friendly amendment to not eliminate it, but simply reduce it by $3,500, which I expect he will not.
Councilor St. Hilaire.
I'd like a vote on the 13,500.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Councilor Husman. Councilor Sonia, I saw your hand.
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I support Councilor St. Hilaire's motion on this. I recognize that elected officials, City Hall staff, there is a benefit from time to time to attending certain conferences that you can bring back best practices or good ideas. But I do just think that given the situation, the optics are not great. And, you know, my understanding is that for certain conferences, there are often grants and things like that available for travel. So should there be an opportunity for staff to attend something that we think would be worthwhile on the city's behalf, I would hope that that staff member or the administration would pursue those grants in order for them to do so. But given the current state of play, I think it makes sense to zero out this item.
Thank you, Councilor Sonia. Councilor Feldman.
I had a question on this. I was hoping somebody could speak to what is a major conference that is included in this, or conferences, because I do remember hearing that in part of the trash contract research that there was a conference that was attended that was the sanitation and hauling conference, and I don't want to lose our city's ability to attend conferences that are beneficial to our residents, whether they understand how they're beneficial or not. So I was hoping for a little more information about that line item, if there's a way to break it down further. Anyone be willing to speak on that? I'm sorry.
Thank you, Councilor Feldman. I see that the mayor's headed to the podium, so it seems like he is willing to speak on that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I think I said this last year, and I'll say it again. Not everything that needs to be learned about how to do things can be done inside our city limits, okay? Traveling to meetings, traveling to conferences, learning from other municipal leaders, learning from experts, it matters. I don't ever go to a single meeting or conference that isn't calculated to try to bring home real value for our community. To your specific question, Councilor Feldman, yes, the cost of sending our purchasing agent and Commissioner of Public Services to Burlington, Vermont, and a couple of nights lodging, and the cost of the conference came out of this line, yes, in this current fiscal year. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilor Feldman. Councilor Rotundo.
Mayor, don't go too far. Don't go too. So I will say I did request this particular line item,
Yes, you did.
knowing that I had it on my radar, and I do want to say that thank you for providing me this information. And I did notice one of the larger items was the $10,975, which was used for not necessarily benefiting to your office, but it was really to the general public of the to the rec department. Really, I think would be the what I'm understanding is a restroom, which is, I'm assuming, that portable restroom that was over by the stairs. So I appreciate Councilor Hausman's friendly amendment, and I understand where Councilor St. Hilaire is coming from. But I do see that within this line budget item, there are several, I mean, a lot of them are small, and then one other one that I saw that kind of caught my eye, and I was familiar, as Mr. Barber called me out on this, was the $5,000 that was towards Triangle, which was it's an organization that was painting 300 of our hydrants. So again, I'm noticing some of these things that are coming out of this line item would be necessarily, maybe it would have been out of DPS or would have come out of the rec department. Is that a safe assessment to say that?
Thanks, Counselor. So, yes, a couple of the lines this year went to cover things that, you know, that have a public benefit, and with the improvements to the turf field at the high school with the stands and lights, we tried porta potties. They don't work. you can't see when you're outside them or inside them after dark. When you have family coming to sporting events or other type of performances, not everybody is as fully ambulatory as they'd like. So we were able to both for fall and spring rent, you saw it, the trail that's more, it's more like what you would see for temporary bathrooms at a wedding reception or something outdoors. So we did that out of this line this year. We have a group of people who have come together to try to fundraise, to try to do more at that location. And one of the things they're looking to fundraise for is a bathroom building like there is at Herd Stadium. That's one. The Triangle program is, Triangle is a nonprofit that provides services to adults with cognitive disabilities. And they came in and approached us about a year ago. And we agreed with them that we would bring, Mr. Barber, I'm going to look to you, is it 6 or 7 of the adults in the program? 50, yep. So last summer, Mr. Barber supervised them, and they painted about 300 fire hydrants in the city, which was a real public safety service. And this spring and into the summer, they're going to be working on helping handle our paper issue at City Hall with hundreds of years of paper records that need to be digitized. So those are some of the things that have, been, this line's been used for this particular year, in addition. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Counselor.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions from counselors on this proposal? Counselor St. Hilaire, I have just a question for you, if I may. Just for clarification for myself as I'm thinking about all of our different proposals that may come, is your hope that this would be, are you proposing a straight cut or a cut with the hope that the mayor would then, we would encourage the mayor to put that money in a different line item?
Yeah, so I think my experience over the years is that we only have the ability to cut, and any money that would be cut from the budget would go back into the general fund, and the mayor would then have the decision on how to spend that. I think in my opening comments, I suggested a few areas that I would recommend that he pursue, including, offsetting the impact of the trash fee hike, perhaps, or looking at some of these positions that we've cut in police and fire, looking at our critical needs from our schools, looking at the library hours, that's where I would look.
Thank you, Counselor. That's helpful. And you're absolutely right. You kind of covered it as an umbrella. I just wanted to clarify. I don't want to make assumptions about where you were coming from, and I really appreciate that clarification. Thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments on this proposal? All right, so we do have a motion and a second. This is on Counselor St. Hilaire's proposed first amendment to the budget. This is for line item 51891, reduction from 13,500 to 0. All those in favor? All those opposed? That fails. Thank you. 3-6-6-3. Thank you. So, Counselor St. Hilaire, I know you have more that you'd like to propose. Counselor Houseman, I wondered, you had a specific thought on this line item. Counselor St. Hilaire, would it be okay with you if we went to that one because they're the same line? Counselor Houseman, you had mentioned you had one.
Yes.
Happy to entertain it.
Yes, I would move supporting, support cutting line item 15891 in the executive budget, which is listed under general expenses, by $3,500 to be $10,000 even.
Is there a second on this one? Any discussion on this?
If I may.
Oh. You may, and then we'll go to Counselor St. Hilaire.
Yeah, if I may, I mean, I guess I would just refer to the comments made by the mayor in that this is a discretionary budget which provides real, at the mayor's election, provides real value on things which are not they're sort of one-off, like the painting of the fire hydrants, that sort of thing. It gives the mayor, as the chief executive, some flexibility to seize opportunities like that would otherwise be more difficult to provide.
Counselor St. Hilaire.
Just wanted to thank Counselor Houseman for introducing the amendment. Happy to support it. Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, this is the proposal, this is the amendment made by Counselor Houseman, same line item we were just discussing, but a reduction from $13,500 to $10,000. All those in favor? Any opposed? No. That carries 9-0. Counselor St. Hilaire, I'd like to go back to you. I know we were working through your list, so we'll give you the floor back.
Yes, line 51142, Executive Office, Racial Justice. Make a motion that we reduce this line from 62,621 to 0. In my opinion, you know, I think we've all been very supportive of the initiative and the efforts over the years related to the mission of this role, but I think in reality, it just hasn't produced what we've been looking for. And in these times, I think we need to look at rolling this back among other roles, and that's a justification for that.
So that's Counselor St. Hilaire's motion. Is there a second? Any discussion? Counselor Sonia.
Thank you, and thank you to Counselor St. Hilaire for getting the ball rolling on the discussion. I will say that I find myself sort of wondering if, again, these are challenging times, but I do find myself wondering if this is an invitation for the city council to be on the hook for getting rid of the DEI program or DEI staff member, rather than that being a full-blown decision made by the executive. I have trouble participating in that if that's the case. I do think these are still times in which, you know, folks feel like they need someone in their corner. We can talk maybe specifically about what we are or are not getting from the role, but cutting to half seems to me to be like, well, we're all gonna jump off this cliff together if we're gonna jump off of it, and I don't feel like that's appropriate. I feel like that's a managerial decision and not one that, as a counselor, I feel like we ought to be taking. And so I will be voting no, even though, again, I think I'd be willing to talk a lot more about what we ought to be getting from the role itself moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Sonia. Counselor Rotundo, and then Counselor Feldman.
Thank you, Madam President. My own experience, unfortunately, with the current DEI director hasn't been successful, and that's regardless of the personality with medical issues and so forth. But in those 9 months of the absence, I've recognized that we haven't had any major issues. From a city side, I know there's issues that have been taken care of. I know we have a very active Human Rights Committee that's been doing a lot of work as well. And for me, you know, if we find there's issues, there's always the opportunity to looking at a consulting firm, although I know, you know, maybe it's a cut, but the reality of it is in the last almost year, there hasn't been that significant presence of a DEI director right now. And to me, therefore, it's, you know, it appears that it's still a necessary function. The work has been started. We know our HR department is still there. And so, and our Human Rights Committee. So in that reasoning, my own experience working or trying to work with the current DEI director through the Youth Collaboration Board, as a city council and so forth, I will be supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Feldman.
Yes, thank you. I want to start with saying that I was on council when we first created this position, and there was a lot of work up front that we needed to do as a city, and I 100% stand by that choice to create this department. I want to take the person out of the position for a minute, though, because I don't want our budget and our future to be determined by choices we're making about funding when it comes to a staffing issue possibly, which is, from my point of view, in this line item, this falls under the nice to have at this point in time in the situation we're facing budget-wise, and it would be nice to have. I would like to have these things, but we can't have nice things this budget. Like, that's just not, we're losing safety and critical services. And so, as much as I don't want to close the door on this work that the city needs to continue doing, I do agree, along with Councilor Rotundo, I've spoken with members of the Human Rights Committee, and they are eager to do a lot of the work, and they are a volunteer-based organization here in our city, made up of citizens that care and want to be here doing that work. So in a year of not being able to have nice to have things, I'm going to be supporting this amendment, so.
Thank you, Counselor. Other discussion, Counselor Milady?
Thank you very much for the conversation, for bringing some of the institutional knowledge to the position. I really appreciate that. I am personally not comfortable cutting this position. It's my opinion, and history is filled with sad examples that in order to be effective and bring about change, you have to have the ability to be in it for the long haul. And I agree with your sentiment, Councilor Feldman, about separating, the person from the position and the essential, and to be willing to look at, needs versus haves. It's just my opinion that this is a must-have. So I will be not in support of this amendment, but I appreciate all the effort being made by Councilor St. Hilaire to trim down the budget.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other comments or discussion on this one from counselors? Counselor Houseman.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo Councilor Feldman's remarks and say that I entirely understand and am not particularly comfortable with supporting this motion, sort of along the lines of what Councilor Sonia made. But I do feel like, as a management matter, this management of this position was not appropriately taken. And while I will oppose the effort to, any effort to reduce the other line item, which is support of DEI initiatives, because as with Councilor Milady, history tells us there is a need to address these items. But I don't think that management has shown that this position has been tended to well. So I will be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor St. Hilaire.
So, I guess I just want to react to the comments about supporting the idea of the role, but acknowledging that the management of the position hasn't been going well. I just don't think it's smart to invest in something that isn't working, and you're throwing money at something that we have a 5-year history on that is not a model that's working. We have a Human Rights Committee. All of us are invested in this work. This can continue. This role, this isn't working. Vote against it.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other comments? I would like to comment on this one. Counselor St. Hilaire, I know this is your motion. Do you feel comfortable switching and just calling for the vote on it? Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much to Vice President St. Hilaire for switching with me for this one. For folks who are not familiar with why that's happening, the council president, whoever that person is, cannot offer an opinion on a motion before the council from the president's seat. So once we switch, I'll be offering an opinion and then staying here through the vote. As a member of the council, Vice President St. Hilaire will call for the vote. And that's why it was important to me to wait to make sure everyone had a chance to comment. And particularly that Vice President St. Hilaire had a chance to comment now that I've asked him to switch. So I thank you, Vice President. Thank you, counselors. I echo the thanks that other counselors have offered, both for this discussion and the thanks to to you, Vice President St. Hilaire, to get the conversation started. I expect that it's not easy to be the first one to jump in and to begin to offer proposals for us to think about, so I appreciate that. For my part, I too would like to join in urging us to separate in any time that we're having a conversation about a line item that is both a specific person that we picture in the job and a role within our city, and to consider the importance of the role within the city when we're thinking about budget. Like Councillor Milady, to me, this does not fall into a nice to have. This, to me, is a must-have item. I offer that both because I think about history of both this country and this city. We're thinking about our 400-plus birthday, and thank you, Councilor Rotundo, and your hardworking team. You're helping us really think about all of these aspects of what our community has been. And there are many good moments, and there are also really difficult moments that we continue to need to grapple with and to be honest about when we think about the history of people of color and marginalized people, not only in our broad community, but in this community. So that's one piece. To me, it feels like this position has, the proposal before us has this position with a suggested reduction. I can't help but think that out of our entire budget, this position already proposed at a reduction is a very small percentage of a very large whole. And to eliminate it feels to me like sort of a repetition of what's happened to people of color, marginalized people over the course of history in this country, which is to say, we can't even offer you this much. There are people in our city who I believe rely on having somebody working on DIB, not for just the big moments, and I respect what you're saying, Councilor Rotundo. There's big moments that we're all aware of, and there are little everyday moments that we may not know about. And I want to particularly say that those of us who are fortunate enough to enjoy the kinds of protection that the color of our skin, of those of us sitting up here, offers us, may really not be aware of what the real lived experiences are of marginalized people in this city. And I say that also thinking about other types of marginalized populations and what the world is like right now for those folks. And I want to draw our attention to a couple of things that I saw recently here in our city that are completely different from how I saw them even a year ago. And those are our public posts on things like the Juneteenth flag raising, the Pride flag raising, and other Pride events in our community. If you have not had a chance to look at the comments beneath those posts, I would encourage you to do it. And you can join me in saying not everybody who made those comments lives in this city, but not everybody who made those comments doesn't live in this city. And I think the conversation or lack thereof that unfolded under those posts is to me enough reason to say we are far from done with this work, and I can't support the reduction of the position that helps us potentially tackle it. So thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor to reduce line 51142 from 62,621,000 to 0. I'm sorry. Mr. Mayor, yes.
Thank you all. Just want to give a couple of thoughts here. One, I propose the position be funded at 20 hours in hopes of saving it. Okay, that was why I put it in front of you that way. I hope that would satisfy your appetite to cut. The reality is, and I'm really going to be echoing, I think, the President's words with my own thought. In a country where Black Americans came to be in this country because they were stolen away from their homes, brought here as slaves, in a country where when slaves were finally made free people, they really weren't, because that was quickly followed by Jim Crow and segregation, lots of violence against people of color in this country. When we think of the last century, we think of the fact that some of our parents and some of our grandparents, depends on your age, were able to get a mortgage, buy a house, build equity, put their kids through college, eventually leave some generational wealth when they passed. Whereas people of color in this country were not able to do that, by and large. They were discriminated against at every turn. They were denied the ability to buy and own a home, and they had to be tenants their whole lives, even though they might have brought to the table the same opportunity, the same ability as white people in this country. They just were denied the opportunity. So there still is work to do in America, in Massachusetts, in Beverly, when it comes to people of color. And then when you think of where we are right now, and I don't mind being partisan right now, where we are right now with Washington attacking children who are not cisgender, with Washington attacking people across the LGBTQ spectrum, with Washington attacking immigrants, there is more than enough need and more than enough work. And I just ask you to keep that in mind as you consider this vote. I ask you to vote down this vote and keep this position where it is at. We need this help. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Milady.
I'm going to just put on my history teacher hat real quick. We're gearing up for the 250th celebration of America. As America was gearing up for its centennial in 1876, it abandoned a 10-year program of Reconstruction because the U.S. government did not have the stamina to keep it going. And many of those events that the mayor alluded to occurred when the government gave up on Reconstruction. For me, my opinion, giving up on this position after only 5 years is a travesty. Thank you.
Okay, City Clerk, oh, go ahead, Councilor Houseman.
Yeah, these conversations are always uncomfortable. We had an uncomfortable occasion some years ago when there was a vacancy on the city council, and we engaged into a difficult conversation ultimately, which resulted in the appointment in a vacancy of our first black city councilor in this city. And I entirely agree with Councilor Milady, the council president, and the mayor. The problem I have is frankly not with the position, but with the mayor's administration of this position. And I'm sorry to put it in such stark terms, but for me, this is really at the mayor's feet. And that this position ought to have been managed in a better way, because I basically support the position. But we've had plenty of opportunity for for the management of this position to be handled appropriately. It hasn't. I see no indication that it's going to change. I don't know that simply reducing the hours really is the kind of management change that we need for this position. So I'll stay with that.
Madam President.
Thank you very much, Vice President St. Hilaire. I mentioned at the beginning of my comments that I too think it's very important to separate the person in any position from the position itself when we're talking about budget. So I concur largely with Councilor Sonia's point of view on this, which is elimination of the position because we question the management of a particular person within the position then cuts off our ability as a city to engage in the further work of this position. So Councilor Sonia, you said it well. I just wanted to add my sort of +1 to what you had mentioned, which is, I would hesitate to have us remove a position which we see value in because we have questioned a particular moment or how the position is currently being handled. And in the time that we've had this position, two different folks have taken up this role. And we've seen different tactics and different approaches from both of those, and I think it likely that this would be a position that would continue to evolve. So, Councilor Sonia, thank you. I'm in agreement with what you had said.
Okay, any other questions or comments? City Clerk corrected me. The motion is on line 51141. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those opposed? Motion passes 5-4.
Vice President St. Hilaire, I suspect it's my handwriting that tripped you up on that number. I'm sorry for that. I left you a note that.
No, I had it wrong on my sheet.
Okay, my one looks like a 2. Lefties, you know. Vice President St. Hilaire, we'll go back to you. Did you have another proposal?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion to reduce line 51137 in the Executive Department Constituent Services Director from $77,625 to 0. Similarly, you know, again, I think we all would love to see this position continue. It's a newer role. We've only had it a few years. I don't see a ton of benefit from my point of view. We all do constituent services every single day. Again, we just can't afford these sorts of positions. We're a lean city, we're a small city, we have a lean budget. We're cutting police and fire. This is the type of role that I think we can do without, and that is the justification for cutting.
Counselor St. Hilaire has made a motion. Is there a second? Is there any discussion? Counselor Feldman.
I just want to say that I will not be supporting this because although I do constituent services every day, I also rely on constituent services here in the city to help me get to the right. The position has been extremely helpful, no matter who has been in it over the last couple of years that it's been in existence, in giving me the ability to serve my constituents better on the fly, because we all have day jobs and it's often just being able to shoot an email or a text to one person and it's taken care of. And I really value that ability to help me provide better constituent services. And a lot of the time, I don't think constituents necessarily know that, because I'll get the answer back and then I'm able to answer myself. And I just want to give credit where credit's due, that a lot of the time that answer is actually coming from constituent services. So I see a great value in the constituent services position.
Thank you, Counselor. We'll go Counselor Rotundo, Crowley, and then Sonia, please.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like as well what you said, Councilor Feldman. I'd like to think that I do the job of constituent service as well. But I will say that she has been very helpful since she started, and I will speak specifically at this position right now as a person, because that is in essence what we're looking at, is this person on this position. For me, and I can only speak for myself, as she has been helpful, even though I like to think I sometimes go above and beyond as a counselor doing constituent service, but I will say she's been very helpful. I know going forward, we're gonna have a lot more phone calls as counselors, specifically with the trash, and just even with the cut in services with other things. I think someone had already stated it during the budget meeting, so for that reason, I will not support it, although I will say at one time I considered it. But seeing where things are really changing within cuts that we've made, proposed, and more cuts that we're going to be making, I truly feel that it will be more of a service for us. But I will say, and I hopes with the one thing I do here is that, and it has definitely gotten better, was the communication piece, which was from the mayor's office. And so I want to thank Amelia, because she has gotten better with that in her role, it is a newer role for her. So I do want to also make that statement right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Crowley, we'll go to you.
Sure, thank you. I just want to, I guess, echo Counselor Rotundo in what he had to say, because in Ward 3, we're almost like partners, because there's a lot of things going on as far as Ward 3, and I need that little bit of extra help. You know, as far as I deal with a lot of constituents, a lot of constituent service things, whether it's housing, whether it's need of food, whatever it might be, or whatever's going on. And anybody that's been in that position is in my back pocket, being able to help find out what's going on and getting us the services to help the constituents in Ward 3. So I appreciate it, and thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Sonia.
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I concur with Counselor Feldman, Crowley, and Rotundo. I think I made this point during the budget hearing, but, you know, respectfully, I hope it was taken. I did point out many times that I thought, for example, the trash rollout, trash fee, trash and recycling program rollout was lacking in communication. I think when you look throughout the proposed cuts in this budget, which was pointed out at the top range from 10 to 20%, it means that when we, as a council, or our colleagues on school committee, or a citizen needs an answer, it's going to get increasingly more difficult within departments to provide those answers in as timely a fashion as we would like. And so having a point person whose job it literally is to help triage those conversations is actually only getting more important as we, progress with this budget and then go into next year's, which might result in even greater cuts. And so the role itself, I think, is, invaluable. And then I've had coffee with Amelia, and I know how gung-ho she is about public service and about finding ways to improve communication within the city and between the city and its residents. And so I think having somebody that is that committed, and again, the salary is not exactly, it's a pretty standard Massachusetts salary. I think given all those facts, given the importance of the role, given the importance I've placed on communication and community engagement, I think it's a great service to have as a city and as a counselor. So I'll be opposing the motion, but I thank the counselor.
Thank you, Counselor Sonia. Counselor Spang, and then we'll go back over to this side.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not to pile on, but I wanted to acknowledge the work and the help that I get from the Constituent Services Director as well. And to note, kind of similar to what Councilor Sonia was saying, the city doesn't have a communications director, but I see this role as filling that gap at a lot of times. So as we think about how roles may transition over time, I think, considering this to be constituent services and some communications, I think that's how the role has been filled, and I think it's a need that any city this size needs to be concerned with how we're communicating with residents. So I just want to echo the thanks for all of that work.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Feldman, then Counselor St. Hilaire.
Very brief. In consideration of this role over my couple of years on council with this role existing, one of the things I have questioned is if this is the right place in the budget for it, because I feel in some ways that it being under the executive isn't as appropriate as possibly being under the city council role. And so I would like to look into, in the coming year for the next budget, possibly moving budgets and line items around, retaining the position, but maybe having a different umbrella under which it was housed, basically, in our budget structurally. So I'm not, that's just a comment rather than an opinion, but I do find that everyone up here is saying how much we rely on the role's ability to function and communication, and I think that that's also a city council function, so just a consideration.
Thank you, Counselor. I remember that being part of the conversation when this was first created, so never hurts to revisit. Counselor St. Hilaire.
Thank you, Madam President. So I just wanted to share, I started my career as a constituent services aide to Governor Cellucci in the governor's office in 1999. So certainly value the role, and as I said at the outset, respect everybody who serves in public service. And, I appreciate hearing the feedback that you find this helpful. I guess my point of view on that is I don't, I appreciate that, but it's not a choice between this or nothing. It's a choice between this or a police officer, or this or a firefighter, or this or a critical need in our school department. And to me, that's a no-brainer. Those roles are far more important to me than another helpful person in the mayor's office, right? And so for me, that's an easy one to cut, in light of the current situation, and that's why I'm made the motion to cut this.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Milady.
I'm going to be in support of Counselor St. Hilaire's cut because again, just my opinion, I feel like this is one of those positions that would be under the category it would be nice to have in a different economic scene than the one that we're in right now. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other comments or discussion from members of the council? Okay, we have a motion and a second. This is on line. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I appreciate the kind words about Ms. Bovin, who's the person in the position now. She's just about to celebrate her, or I think she just did her first anniversary as the Constituent Services Director. The position has in fact been budgeted and staffed for about 9 years. And I think I hear from some of you how critically important it is to help you in your work, and you're absolutely spot on. It's really hard being a part-time elected official. I get it. I've had the ability to be a full-time elected official in 2 different roles, and my time as a city councilor was very hard, right? You have day jobs, you have families, you have a lot of commitments, and it's your time off that becomes your time to be a city councilor. So I appreciate your work, and I appreciate your recognition of how important it is to have the resource that the Constituent Services Director position provides. And I just ask you folks, with what we're trying to accomplish as a city and the work that you expect us to deliver on, please do not handcuff my office's ability to do this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other discussion on this one? All right, there's a motion and a second. This is on the proposed amendment concerning line item 51137, a reduction from the full budgeted amount to 0. All those in favor? All those opposed? That fails 2-7. Councillor St. Hilaire, we'll return to you if you have others.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion to amend line 51130 in the Executive Department Chief of Staff line item from 115,000 to 0. Similar to my line of thinking on the previous 2 amendments, you know, this is a non-essential role. It's a support position in the mayor's office. It's recently been combined with another position that's been eliminated, the sustainability position. Again, in a perfect world, it's a great position to have, but in a world in which, you know, we're making the choices in which we're making, 115,000 can go a long way in other areas, and I make a motion that we cut that.
Is there a second for this motion?
I think I'll second for conversation. Sorry, Karen. I'll second for conversation.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second for discussion. Thank you, Councillor Milady. Is there any comment or question from members of the council? Councillor Sonia.
Thank you, and thank you again to the council for instigating the conversation. Mayor, I'm just hoping maybe you can talk about how this role frees you up to do other stuff, I guess, right? You know, like understanding, you know, the remit of the position, but then also how it frees up your calendar, perhaps, and maybe that's where the value lies, is that the mayor is able to interact and you know, do other stuff, and ideally, you know, be productive elsewhere, while this this person, the chief of staff, is able to triage situations that maybe, you know, are able to be left off the mayor's desk as a result. And sorry for the starburst. That's from Councilor Rotundo.
Cut you right as you were trying to fuel up, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Councilor. So a little bit of history. When I was elected mayor, of the 42 mayors who were not city councilors in the state at the time, I think Cambridge, Worcester, and Lowell have city managers, and their city councilors elect one of their ranks to be mayor. So of the 42 cities at the time that had mayors who served more as chief executive of the city, 39 had a chief of staff. Beverly was one of 3 that did not. So the position was created when I first came through the door. And it's been there since. Mayor Scanlon had a chief of staff on 2 different occasions. His second chief of staff was Mr. Dan Murphy. And he retired, I think, a second time. Came in to help his good friend he supported greatly as mayor, and then he retired a second time, and that was during, I think, the second recession of the earlier part of the century. So Mayor Scanlon let that position lay unfilled at that time, but it was restored when I first started. We took two positions that were vacant last year. Our former chief of staff had left, and our former sustainability director had left. And we took those two positions and made them one, with a goal that the chief of staff and sustainability would have the ability to spend about 60% time on chief of staff work and 40% time on sustainability climate work. And so how has it been working? I will say that a couple of major projects that the chief of staff and sustainability is working on right now. She is co-leading with Mr. Barber, the assistant commissioner of DPS, the effort to get this building ready to be vacated as we get into August. And specifically, the 400 years of paper that are sitting in this building. So there's a real process underway that they are spearheading, and it's about a half a year process when it's, I think, at least a half year when it's all said and done. It's about digitizing records that can then be destroyed and digitizing other records that must be kept for statutory reasons, and saving other records that, are best kept for historic reasons. Also, inventorying and determining what furniture and other things we're going to need in our temporary space and what needs to be stored to come back in when the building's done. So that's a significant project she's been spearheading. She's been spearheading another project on her own, I say on her own, in partnership with our Waste Reduction Committee, and that is the research that has gone into and continues to happen to try to create and build a CHARM facility, which stands for Center for Hard to Recycle Materials. In partnership with rolling out a new trash and recycling program, we are working to offer some CHARM opportunities, things that are harder to recycle, that we're trying to set up a center at Stanley Street. We're going to lead with cardboard first. Some of you have heard this pitch as I've been explaining the new program to people, but there are things that are really hard to recycle, like batteries and light bulbs, like styrofoam and other type of materials. And we're working with other communities that have been grappling with the same things, and we're working with, as I said, our volunteer team to put that in place. Those are just a couple of things that she's spearheading. She also, the Chief of Staff and Sustainability, works daily, regularly with the other staff in our executive office, and that's a significant part of her role. She has been by my side, along with 7 department heads, in working through, over the last 9 months or so, the trash and recycling contract process. So those are just a few things, and then there, as I said, there's the day-to-day. We receive a lot. We all come in on Monday morning with a plan to proactively get a lot of work done, and we receive a lot. It starts Monday, and it continues right through the week, and it doesn't stop on the weekend. So thank you for posing the question, Councilor. The work is real, and there's a lot of it. I'll say one last one. We've been working together on trying to get the electric buses operational, and they are now operational. You heard that you've heard from many people various pieces of the facts. We were able to secure a grant for 8 electric school buses a couple of years ago. The Trump administration froze all that money last January. We went through several months of not knowing whether the money would really come, so we had to freeze the project ourselves, and then we had to pick it back up. So we now have 8 electric school buses paid for entirely by a federal grant, a state grant, and some direct pay tax credits. And that means that we've saved just about $1 million on not buying 8 gas and diesel buses, and instead having the buses, the charging station infrastructure, and the work to install it all covered by those grants. So that's another project that she's been, by my side, along with several other department heads, working through for many months. I hope that's helpful to hear. And since I'm up here, I want to say what I said with the last proposal. Please, we have a lot of work to get done. You would not be happy if it doesn't get done. We all need to get that work done together. And I ask you, please don't handcuff our efforts to do our part as the executive branch of government. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Counselor Sonia, was that helpful for your question? Any further question from you?
It was, Madam President, and no questions at this time.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Counselor St. Hilaire.
Just want to acknowledge all of these folks work for the mayor, and he's got a lot of staff, a lot of people. You know, Darlene Wynn commented about making do with less during the public hearing. I think this would be along those lines.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other comments or discussion from members of the council on this one? Okay, we have a motion and a second. This is the proposed amendment to reduce line item 51130 from 115,000 to 0. All those in favor? All those opposed? This one fails 1-8. Counselor St. Hilaire, back over to you.
Thank you, Madam President. Move the line, make a motion to amend line 57301 in the executive office, other charges and expenses, from $15,075 to 0. Similarly to the line item related to travel and expenses, I feel like this is just unnecessary spending in these times. It's memberships to things like MMA and so forth, all great things, but do we really need to be doing that this year? That's my motion.
Thank you, Counselor. That's the motion. Is there a second? Thank you, Counselor Rotundo. So we have a motion and a second for discussion. Counselor Spang, I saw your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to speak to the importance of some of these memberships. The MAPC is, I'm not going to get the acronym correctly, but I know it's our Regional Planning Council. And the MMA is something that I use as a counselor. I think they provide a lot of trainings and webinars online for people to view, and it was really helpful as I started learning about what it means to be a city councilor and the role and ways to fill it. I think that's invaluable information, so I'm not going to support this amendment.
Thank you, Counselor Spang. And, Counselor Houseman.
I would just reiterate what Counselor Spang said. So I do not intend to support this motion.
Counselor St. Hilaire.
I would just respond, just that there's a lot of information available on the internet and, you know, again, making do with less, trying to find money to support other positions of need. And again, it's great to have resources, but we have resources at our disposal that are free.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other comments from members of the council on this one? All right, we have a motion and a second. This is for line 57301, a reduction from $15,075 to 0. All those in favor? All those opposed? That fails 1-8. Counselor St. Hilaire, back over to you.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion to amend line 55000 in the executive department, other expenses, from $5,000 to 0. It was described as unbudgeted money related to potential DEI projects or needs. I think we would all support an initiative or project potentially that comes before us, but having just $5,000 sitting there for whatever doesn't seem to be appropriate, so I would like to motion that we cut that.
Thank you, Counselor. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Thank you. So a motion and a second. Thank you, Counselor Feldman. Counselor Feldman, we'll go to you.
In light of our recent vote to reduce this position, I was wondering if somebody could speak to, with this line item, if these funds are available for the work of the Human Rights Committee, if they're under the budget of the executive, like what would these funds be used for to fund without a director to allocate them, is my, I guess, question.
Is there someone who could speak to that? Mr. Mayor or Mr. Ailes? Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, in general, I would just state that in lieu of the position which, you know, just got reduced out of the budget, this is even more imperative to be able to have some resources to go to some of these initiatives. Things we've used this for in the past have to do with some consultation work, surveys that we've done. This line used to be a lot larger, and we used it for some of the audit, the initial audit that was performed. And there's also work out in the community and translation services. So, yeah, if you've got other things too, Mayor.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't mean to cut you up, but I mean, when we started putting devices at the counters at some of the city hall, you know, help desks, help windows, that people could translate on the device to help them communicate with, for example, the clerk staff and others. So, I mean, you know, we can utilize it for anything that, you know, that we need to in that sense. It's $5,000, right?
Yeah, no,
It's a little and it's a lot, depending on how you look at it, right? But it's a little bit of flexibility right there. I know you got a future proposal, a future amendment coming up to eliminate the reserve for unforeseen, you know, just.
So along those, my comment would be that I was involved in part of the work in the audit and the digital equity audit, including those iPads for the translation services were such a needed addition to help our city hall staff function. So that alone, that alone tells me that there is a need, and that I wouldn't want to see this go away, because those translation services are really essential. So if work like that is coming out of this, it's direct impact to our constituents that come here to City Hall. So I just thank you for answering that's where it came from, because I couldn't remember. So.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Houseman, and then Counselor Sonia, please.
Excuse me. Yeah, I view this line in light of the earlier vote that we took as all the more imperative to maintain. It is a modest amount, to be sure. I strongly support the efforts of the DEIB initiatives, if we can figure out a way to manage it in a way that is effective and delivers for our constituents. So I will not support cutting this amount. It is a relative pittance compared to the $2 million structural deficit that we face for FY28. You know, hope that, like the translation services and so forth, this can be put to good use, and perhaps the administration can bring forth additional initiatives in the future that would help grow these kinds of efforts. So I will not be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Counselor Sonia, and then Counselor Feldman.
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, it's just my fundamental belief, first off, especially on the heels of the vote that the council took earlier, but it's my fundamental belief that if we're communicating the way that we ought to be, if we're engaging communities the way we ought to be, then every year we should probably be finding at least $5,000 worth of new ways to reach folks who are often not at the table, so to speak. It's a tiny amount of money. I understand the councilors' commitment to making sure that residents of all stripes feel like you know, they're getting a budget that works for them. But I think if we're doing our jobs well, we're meeting folks where they are, and we are you know, devising projects and thinking about ways to bring more folks into the fold, expanding that tent, so to speak. And $5,000 seems like a very small investment in order to pursue that mission. So I won't be supporting this, but I thank the councilor.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Feldman.
Yes, I'd also like to point out that line number 51193 for interpretation services for $2,000 was reduced by 100%. So this is really a net of $3,000 because that was eliminated completely, interpretation services. So not to go hard on this translation and interpretation, but being part of that digital equity audit and accessing those services, it's such an accessibility issue to be able to have even those services. So with that completely zeroed out, it's really only $3,000 in my math.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other comments on this one? All right, we have a motion and a second. This is for line 55000. The proposal is to reduce from $5,000 to 0. All those in favor? All those opposed? That fails 1-8. Counselor St. Hilaire, we'll go back to you.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion to amend the line 57100, the Health Department travel expenses, reduced from $3,000 to 0. Similar to my motion related to the mayor's travel, I just think, we need to not travel this year in light of the budget situation and focus on things here in the city of Beverly. So I would make a motion to amend that line.
What page is that?
I'm not sure what page. It's the Health Department budget. Line is 57100.
It's gonna be on 99, 102?
What's the page?
102?
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Counselor Rotundo.
Madam President, I do see we have our director in the audience. Could we have her come to the podium to ask exactly what that line item is for, so we can get a better explanation since it is out of her budget?
Yes, if she's willing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. City councilors, thank you for allowing me to come up here and just speak to that line item. It is a small line item. I believe it's already been reduced for this coming FY27. This allows us, similar to what the mayor is doing, in order for us to maintain credentials which require a certain amount of CEUs every year. These credentials are not necessarily optional. We need to maintain these credentials in order to do our jobs. A lot of our different regulations put provisions in place saying, if you're working and reviewing Title V plans, for example, you need to have a registered sanitarian license. In order to maintain those credentials, we need to attend certain conferences, CEUs. Fortunately, we do have some funds out of the Public Health Excellence Grant Fund that we have as a regional resource for now. It may go away as of fiscal year 28, but they can only pay for conference registration, things like that, but they can't reimburse our staff members for using their own cars to attend these conferences. These conferences vary a range, like they could be from dealing with the Title V seminar on new and innovative systems, or it could be a refresher in the housing code. And in the health department, we're a jack of all trades. We need to be diverse in a lot of different fields, and sometimes we deal with certain things more than other things. Sometimes our staff members, if we have not dealt with it in a while, it's helpful to go to those trainings and seminars in order to refresh memories and also talk with our colleagues from other from other municipalities and how they're handling those situations. Also, we do have a small line item in the health department budget for vehicle allowance. So that is to specifically reimburse our inspectors or any other health department staff that will be doing inspections, or, for example, our nurse might submit for mileage reimbursement when she's doing a visit for a new mother and providing free resources and items for this new parent. So that allows us to reimburse our staff for their own city vehicles. I try not to pull from the from the travel expense line in order to do that, but sometimes we do have to, depending on, the volume of complaints and things like that. But if we have gone to out-of-state conference. Like, for example, I was able to go to Ohio recently for the Association of Food and Drug Officials, and we're typically not going out of state, the health department, unless we have grant funding, and we were able to all do that with a federal grant. So the travel expense line items is really just for local within Massachusetts to attend our different seminars at like Mass Association of Health Officials, MAHB, which is Mass Association of Health Boards, different items like that, which provide a great value. And yeah, I think it's going to be difficult also for our staff. Sometimes they get bombarded on a regular basis, and the complaints are not always the best. And I think sometimes they do need a day out of the office to recharge, connect with colleagues, and bring new innovative ideas. It hits the reset button sometimes for them. And I do think it makes a difference. And I've honestly dialed back going to conferences myself just because I feel like we're so overwhelmed right now in the office and trying to send inspectors here and there when we have something coming up. So I hope that helps explain that line item a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other questions or discussion from counselors on this one? Okay, we have a motion and a second. This is on line 57100. The proposal is to reduce from $3,000 to $0. All those in favor? All those opposed? That fails 1-8. Counselor St. Hilaire.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion related to line item 57820, reserve for appropriation, the reserve for unforeseen. Motion is to reduce the line item from $225,000 to $0. As I've stated repeatedly over the years, this is unbudgeted money. When I first joined the council in 2014, this was about $50,000. It's ballooned as high as $250,000. This year is at $225,000. I just feel like if there's things that come up through the course of the year, they should come before the council, and you know, we should consider those things. I think let's cut this and put it back to the budget.
Is there a second on the motion? Second. Thank you. We have a second. If I could just ask a question, maybe there's folks who are able to answer it. Just as a clarifying question for myself, if money were to be used from this item to be used for a different purpose, would it need to come to the council for approval of a transfer?
Yes, Madam President.
Okay, Mr. Perry, hello, thank you.
Thank you. With your permission, good evening, everyone. This is something I've risen over the last 3 or 4 years with Council St. Hilaire. As you know, as your budget analyst, I try to protect the budget, the fund balances. I can assure you that this is not a good idea from a fiduciary point of view. A couple of reasons. Number one, the margins you have in the budget this year are a lot less than they have in prior years. As such, you know, my concern for deficits that could occur. No one here can predict how much snow we're going to get next year. I'm sure we'd all agree with that. No one can predict what's going to happen in various departments. We observed we needed $350,000 of public safety for overtime issues. I myself have articulated my concerns about overtime in public safety. I'm worried about that. We'll see how that plays out. The bottom line to it, this is a standard practice in municipal government. It's a wise decision, and as your budget analyst, I strongly recommend that you do not support this motion. I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Councilor Milady, then Councilor St. Hilaire.
I'm going to be brief. Councilor St. Hilaire, I will support this. If there are other councilors who would like to see this number reduced to find some sort of compromise, I would also be in conversation with that. Thank you.
Councilor St. Hilaire and then Councilor Spang.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Mr. Perry's comments. You know, no, you're right. No one can predict, yet we're predicting $225,000. And so over the years, Mr. Ailes has acknowledged that within the budget, there are a number of areas that he calls safety valves, right? We just talked about a couple of them, the $5,000 for who knows what, the $3,000 in the health department for some certifications maybe. You know, we don't know, right? And these areas exist throughout the budget. Over the years, we'll hear department heads talk about transferring funds within their departments. there's extra money built into this thing. I think we just need to either eliminate or reduce this number, because they're building in a cushion, in my opinion.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Spang.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, I had a question. It's my understanding that spending any of this money requires city council approval, correct?
Yes, Counselor, is the council president, yes, in order to, if you do approve this, the mayor would have to come to you and ask for a transfer from this, so you completely control this line item.
And then when the budget, say the budget is adopted tonight, it starts on July 1st.
Correct.
We do not have the ability to transfer any free cash until that is certified at a later point in the year,
Correct, yes. So great comment, Counselor. So free cash is traditionally, the balance sheet is submitted around Thanksgiving, maybe around that time, early December, we get certification. So between July 1 and the point we get free cash certification from the Department of Revenue, there's no capacity to transfer if we get into a fund balance deficit other than transferring from an existing line item to a new one. And that's early in the budgetary season, that gets even more complicated trying to predict what will happen through next June. So you're absolutely correct. Another reason why, in my professional opinion, it would be very unwise to reduce this in any capacity.
And if I may, one more.
You may.
So it's basically a savings account for the city to use if an unexpected fund or expense comes up before free cash is certified again.
Well, it is not just for that. You can use it later in the fiscal year too and not use free cash. To refresh your memory, our financial policies dictate really we use free cash for capital one-time items, things of that nature. We don't really use it for salaries or expenditures. This would be more in line for, I'll use the public safety. We ran out of overtime in FY26. This would be more appropriate to use it for that versus the free cash position. And I can assure you that every city and town in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts does this. This is not unique. We've been doing this here in the 10 years I've been here with you, and the dollars have changed, that's true, but the budget's also gotten bigger. Again, as a budget, I don't rise on policy matters. I mean, if you want to cut a line item, but this is a fiduciary responsibility. We've got to protect the various fund balances. And as your budget analyst, again, I strongly recommend that you leave this line item as is.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Feldman.
Yes, thank you. I would, I heard Counselor Milady mention looking at reducing this line item as a possibility instead of zeroing it out. And I appreciate Counselor St. Hilaire bringing this up because it does bring up, kind of shows the work, how, and Counselor Spank's questions to help the public understand how money works in the city and why these type of accounts exist. In light of, in my viewing of the budget, and if this were to be reduced by a certain amount, I would hope that we could, in terms of, this would be one where I would want to see a specific reallocation. And I believe with the amount of overtime and in both fire and police and the recent correspondence we received about safety in the fire department, I would hope that we could reduce this line item by the amount combined with the reduction that we've already taken in the DEIB position to possibly restore a safety officer in the fire department, which would then reduce the overtime needed that we're all in agreement that could be over, which is one of the reasons why we want to keep this line item where it is because of those overtime. So I would think that maybe a reduction, I'm not 100% sure because of the way the fire department is broken out, what that total would look like to restore that position, but I would like to talk about reducing the reserve for unforeseen by the balance to fund that position. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Counselor. And just a reminder for those following, we could make that recommendation and we are not able to actually apply the money there. So it's important to just specify that. Counselor Houseman.
I'd like to ask Mr. Perry to come to the podium again.
Mr. Perry, please.
This is going to be a little repetitious, so bear with me. The council, correct me if I'm wrong, no funds can be utilized out of this line item without a council vote, is that correct?
Correct.
The council has full supervisory oversight of this amount. Free cash is typically certified October, November,
November, December.
November, December. So for nearly half the fiscal year, in the absence of this account, the city has no flexibility to address unforeseen items that may come up by way of an emergency. As long as the city council has the opportunity to take a vote and say over whatever happens in this account, I see no reason for us to take the position that for some reason this could be used as a slush fund, if you will, for discretionary expenses by the administration. So given that we do not have the ability to determine what happens to any savings we create, we cannot allocate, we can request, but the mayor has complete control over how any savings we create are spent. I'm not in favor of reducing this item, and I will not support this motion.
And if I may add to your comments, Counselor, in my view, it would be very unwise because of the snow and ice if somebody wants to reduce this line item in the hopes that we can use it for something else. It's a wonderful thing, but I would not consider that either until you get through the snow season. If we get through the snow season, and we are lucky this year, we don't have a lot of snow, and we also don't have other challenges to the budget, then, if the notion that you can work with the mayor to use maybe some of that money for exactly some of the things that Councilor Feldman articulated, that opportunity may present itself. But this is going to be July 1, and I'm very nervous as a budget person. If you run a deficit and you close a deficit on June 30th, not only do you reduce your free cash by regulations, but then you got to raise it on the tax rate. You get a double penalty if you have a deficit. So you've got to be careful from an accounting perspective on these things. That's why you have this kind of a line item here in Beverly and in every other city and town in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It's a double penalty.
If I may, I sort of think it's been anticipated. I'd like to hear from Finance Director Ailes on this question as well.
Happily.
Thank you.
Mr. Ailes also had raised his hand to talk, so it seems like we all like to hear from Mr. Ailes, even Mr. Ailes. Thank you, Mr. Ailes.
Thank you, Madam President. I really appreciate the chance to just give a little perspective on this. I am urging you wholeheartedly to leave this line alone. We have run this budget so tight that there is little to no flexibility in departments. You see departments after departments with 20% reductions year over year. Our flexibility in this budget is this line, and that is it. And let me give you an equivalent perspective. This budget is $180 million, okay? That's $4 million a week we're pushing out the door through salaries, through contracts, through all sorts of things that are contained in here. This line item is $225,000. Our chance for overages and chance for deficits are real, and we don't have access to any flexible spending until free cash gets certified, which Mr. Perry said, and I agree with everything Mr. Perry said. You've got someone who's been in the finance industry for overseeing all of the municipalities telling you don't do this. There's real value there. He's got over 40 years doing this work. I'm here in this role for going on 13 years now saying this is a bad idea. Give you some perspective to those at home that are listening. It's the equivalent of having a $3,000 a month mortgage and not having $3.75 in the bank. That's how tight this will be if you cut this line. So I just had to say that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Ailes. Councilor Milady, please.
I guess I have a clarifying question for Councilor Feldman, and I would like to hear from Chief O'Connor, and I also understand that he might not be able to answer the question. So Councilor Feldman, if I'm following what you're saying, is there's the potential to get in front of the possible need to pay overtime for fire department staff if we're able to have an additional member of the department instead of having to possibly vote on a larger number later on? I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, I'm just trying to follow what you were saying about the compromise line item number.
Yes.
I was advocating for, if we did reduce this by some amount, which I don't 100% even know what that amount would be, that I was advocating for the restoration of the one fire department personnel that was eliminated, but in conjunction with the cuts that have already been made, because those, if there was one thing I was to see restored in the budget at this point in time, I would advocate for restoring it there, if that could happen. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to come out of here, but because this bucket would cover any overtime in those type of departments as a possibility, I could see this as a likely place to reallocate some of the funding. So that's the only reason why I was bringing it up with this specific line item. That being said, the margins are really, really tight, and it does need council approval, so I'm not inclined to really pursue a reduction further, but I'd be open for discussing it.
And then my next question is for Chief O'Connor, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chief. And Councilor Crowley, we'll go to you next. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chief O'Connor. Councilor Milady.
Chief, you're too handsome in your uniform to be hiding in the back. We need to give you a nice zoom in on BevCam.
Well, wait till you hear my answer.
Thank you. So if the opportunity presented itself for this suggestion of a reallocation of funds, I'm trying to use my words carefully, would you be able to give the council a rough estimate about what that position salary-wise would be? So if I made an amendment to Councilor St. Hilaire's amendment, the numbers would then match up.
The number that was reduced was, all right. So this is including.
Mr. Rose, you look handsome too, if you want to stand next to him, you can.
So if we take a look at salary plus the benefits, like if we take whole numbers, it's 156.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Councilor Crowley.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody's conversation on this. The only concern I have is that time that's from June, July, up until November, as far as what's going to be unforeseen. And my concern there is, I would ask that we get through that time, and however everything comes back, is that we readdress it then. But I think for right now, the margins are super tight, and looking at where things are at, with me being in a different municipality and everything is that tight, I can see this more from being on the other side. So my recommendation is that we leave this alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Crowley. Any other discussion on this one? Okay, we have a motion and a second. This is the proposal to reduce line 57820 from $225,000 to $0. All those in favor? All those opposed? That fails 2-7. Councilor St. Hilaire.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion to amend line 57811, reserve for appropriation, salary pool for exempt employees. Make a motion to reduce this from 150,000 to 0. This is a line item used for management salary increases every year. Again, in light of the financial crisis that we're in the fact that we just passed along a massive trash hike to all of our residents and are struggling to fund our schools and afford to pay for police and fire and cutting libraries. I don't think it's appropriate to be handing out salaries at City Hall. Not everyone gets a raise every year, unfortunately, and I think this year it's wise for us to share some of the burden. So I'm going to ask for that motion.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this one? Councilor Feldman.
This one, I would like to just remind everyone following along at home that this line item for $150,000 is spread out over many departments, raises for managerial staff in those departments. And if I'm looking at my totals correctly, I think every single one of these departments has lost at least one employee, which means that the differential that we're saving in each department by putting more work on the managers of these departments by at least one full-time equivalent, if not more than one full-time equivalent, is still a net savings of 20%, because the raises that we're giving these managers is nowhere near the cost to the taxpayers of a full-time employee with benefits. So the amount of work that they're picking up because their staffs are so impacted, I want to keep these managers in these roles because we've really decimated their budgets. Anywhere we can, we've cut. We've reduced about 20 full-time employees from these departments that are managed by non-union employees. And so I don't think in terms of, I don't think it's fair to be asking them to do the work of multiple employees that we've taken out of their budget by not giving them a cost of living adjustment. It doesn't seem fair to me with the amount of reductions their department's already taken. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Councilor Feldman. Councilor Rotundo, sorry, I did see Councilor Rotundo and then Councilor Milady.
Thank you, Madam President. I did have this as a consideration. I did a long time ago, but reality is I actually talked with our budget analyst, and maybe hopefully for some clarification. I had asked specifically, as a whole, how many employees does this affect, and what in fact does that number look like from a percentage-wise? Because to keep it equitable amongst our other unions, I wanted to make sure when I did originally propose this several years ago and we reduced it, it was in fact to keep it equitable with what the other unions were getting. My understanding right now, and I'm hoping Mr. Perry could give me a better perspective publicly, is with all the non-union employees, which doesn't necessarily translate to just our department heads, it also is other people who are confidential employees and stuff, but as a whole number, what is that percentage?
Sure. Thank you for the question. Yeah, and you're right, Council. We did spend some time on the phone on this, and the Council had me cranking out my spreadsheets and everything else on the thing. But I believe there's something like 32, 33 employees involved with that. And you are correct, Councilor. They're not all department heads. Some of our are exempt employees, like administrative assistants, things of that nature, lower level employees as well. When I ran the numbers, it amounts to like 3.002% increase across the board. And as proper management dictates, you should leave it, in my view anyways, with the mayor to determine maybe somebody deserves 4%, somebody deserves 1%. That's a managerial question. With relationship to everyone else and the salaries that you're seeing in the unions, the schools are anywhere from 3, 4, 5 up to 8, 9%, depending on steps and lanes and things of that nature. Public safety people were about 4%. The BMEA were 3.5%, I believe it was, and we also reclassified them, as you all know. We worked on that this past year. And just in terms of one, just to refresh all your memories, and I'm going to pick on the city clerk a little bit here. We changed, actually you and I worked on that, Councilor, where we changed city ordinances where the city council determined the salary of the city clerk. You voted on that, I think, in March, if I'm not mistaken. And the city clerk, I think it was unanimous. I could be wrong on that, but we voted unanimously, I believe, to give her a 3%, which is right in line with what the mayor's requesting for these other proposals. So to answer your question, it's pretty consistent with it's actually below most of the unions. It's consistent with the clerk's increase, and the salaries across the board would be approximately 3%.
Thank you, Counselor Tendo. Counselor Milady.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be voting in favor of this, and for some context, as a union member, I've had some years where I have not gotten a raise. My wife is in the private sector, and she has not gotten a raise in over 4 years. It's a small company, but it was a decision made by her boss in terms of how can we keep the business afloat during questionable economic times. So I appreciate where Councilor St. Hilaire is coming from.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Sonia.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you again to Councilor St. Hilaire for bringing this up for discussion. I know this is controlled, I think, a little bit differently through ordinance that was established before my time on the council, but I believe this council is getting a raise this year. And as such, I would find it inappropriate to not provide a raise to folks who are, as Councilor Feldman pointed out, increasingly stretched thin, working longer hours and doing more with less, unless we propose an ordinance revision or change or something, amendment this very evening to make sure that we as well do not get a raise.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Houseman.
As we've been working through Councilor St. Hilaire's list, others of us who might have amendments we might want to make have not had an opportunity to do so. I take Council Sonia's point. I will be recommending, when I get a chance to, two things. One is a cut to the budget analyst position in terms of his wages, and also sort of jumping the gun of where I was going to go, but it's on the table at this point by Councilor Sonia's comments. The budget analyst and I discussed this. He makes a report to the council on city council salaries, and I agree that the city council should be sharing in the pain and sending both an example and a message in terms of raises. So I want to leave that for the point when I actually make an amendment. But I think there is a validity to what has been said, that, you know, the bargaining units have become accustomed to raises over the amount, on an annual basis, over the amount of Proposition 2.5. And I don't think we are in that position anymore. I don't think we should be giving raises more than Proposition 2.5 if we're giving raises at all. And so while I may not support the motion on the floor in terms of amount and eliminating it, I do think, as a matter of principle, we all need to be sharing the pain and sending that message to our constituents who, like the rest of us, are in an affordability crisis, and sending the message that, you know, we're going to share in the struggle, if you will, of the times that we have on our table. So, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other comments from the council? All right, we have a motion and a second. This is the proposal to amend line 57811 from 150,000 to 0. All those in favor? All those opposed? That fails 2-7. Councilor St. Hilaire, I'm just thinking about time, and that I did have a couple folks ask for a recess, just for a pause for a little bit. Where are we on your list, just so I can sort of gauge?
I've got a few more, but I would be happy to defer to Councilor Houseman if he wants to jump in.
Maybe before we do either of those things, if it's okay, I would take a motion for a 10-minute recess. I think folks could use a stretch break, maybe bathroom, grab some water. Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. We'll be back in 10 minutes. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Call the full council back to order following that recess. Thank you, everybody, for your flexibility, although I think maybe most of us in the room were ready for a little bit of a stretch break, so thank you for that. We'll come back to order now. I know we were going to go to Councilor Houseman. I think he's just taking up a quick point of order question. Just so I can sort of gauge where we're at, Councilor St. Hilaire, I know you had a few additional proposals that will be coming up. Could you just give me a sense, do you have a list of how many you have on your list? Okay. I know Councilor Houseman has some other councilors who are here. Does anybody else have proposed amendments? Councilor Rotundo, one or two? Okay, thank you. Anybody else with proposed amendments you were hoping to make this evening? Not, okay. Thank you, Councilor Feldman. Okay. That's helpful just to help me get a sense and to gauge. Councilor St. Hilaire, why don't we go to your next one, and then I know you were willing to defer to Councilor Houseman when he comes back. Perhaps we can work through your next one on your list, and then we'll go to him if you're still open to that.
Certainly. Thank you, Madam President. I would make a motion to reduce line 53034 in the Finance Department, use of consultant from $12,500 to zero. As I've stated previously, I think use of consultants is an area that we should be looking at in terms of controlling costs. We've got a big staff, we've got a lot of resources. I know that might delay some projects and things like that, but that would be the justification for eliminating this.
Thank you, Councilor. So there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Thank you, Councilor Feldman. And I don't want to ding you, Councilor Feldman, but your microphone. But Councilor Feldman seconds that for discussion if you couldn't hear. So we've got a motion and a second for discussion. Is there any discussion? Councilor Sonia.
I suppose I'd ask the finance director to maybe walk through this line item, ACFR support, et cetera, and yeah, catch us up on, and those watching, why it's needed.
Thank you, Councilor Sonia. Thank you, Mr. Ailes.
Thank you for the question, Councilor Sonia. Yeah, this particular line item encompasses all of the external support that the accounting department for the city needs in a given year. Now, keep in mind, like I said earlier, we're $180 million. With the enterprise funds, we're closer to $200 million a year coming in and out. It's a large organization in terms of a financial perspective. We have an accounting director. We have a financial analyst. We have an accounts payable clerk, and we have a payroll clerk. That's all the people that are in that department. We're responsible for the integrity of all the internal controls throughout the city and all their departments. We're responsible for all the processes and procedures to ensure the integrity of the accounting system, which is required by the state. And we're required to present financial statements annually that conform with certain guidelines. So we hire our independent auditor through the city council's budget. They come in, perform an independent audit, but there are components to our financial statements that we do not account for internally. Things like our fixed asset system and the appropriate depreciation and gap recognition of certain required accounting adjustments that are done basically outside the accounting system, kind of in the period 13 adjustment kind of stuff. They take care of a lot of that. So we have to hire independent experts in those particular areas of expertise to provide the support so that we can produce an annual financial statement, which is required of all municipalities. I mean, we could not do it. So that's the question before you.
Thank you, Mr. Ailes. And Councilor Houseman, just so that you're in the loop, we took the next of Councilor St. Hilaire's, and then we'll go, he's going to defer to you for your list. We'll go to there. This is a proposal on line item 53034. This is a reduction in the consulting line in the Finance Department from $12,500 to zero. Councilor Rotundo and then Councilor Feldman.
Thank you. The consultant lines, I mean, I know my colleague, Councilor St. Hilaire, has mentioned several times about cutting consultant lines. I look at it a little differently. I look at the consultant lines as sort of taking the tasks of these positions that we've been cutting. I think we're really looking at it as an opportunity where we're not paying pensions and we're not paying health insurance, but yet we're still asking. And a great example right now is the budget book that came out and wasn't digitized for us in a timely manner because we were expecting one person to do all this work. So I think, looking at consultant line items right now, for me, is really an opportunity to save money, in essence, when we're letting go of bodies. Can I ask if we could have Mr. Perry just kind of
Yes,
give an opinion on this?
thank you, Counselor. Thank you, Mr. Perry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Yeah, some quick comments. So we are about, help me, Mr. Ailes, about 210 million now, operation, yeah. It is my professional opinion that the finance department within the city of Beverly with a $210 million operation is underfunded. That's my opinion. We used to have, as you know, an assistant finance director, which I supported years ago, and this council supported it as well. We are unable to do a lot of the things that has to be done. I'll even add, which is really not part of the conversation, which I have criticized the mayor and Mr. Ailes in my private dialogue with him in various meetings, the fact we only have a part-time assessor, principal assessor. And the opportunities, I think, we're losing of potentially grabbing even more growth out there because we don't really fund that assessing operation properly. So I know that we've in the past have had to go outside the department to do what is known as Schedule A. Schedule A is required by the Department of Revenue. If we don't do it, we're not going to get our local aid if we didn't get it done by March. They've also had to go outside to do the balance sheet sometimes with our new city accountant who's sitting right next to me here, Donna Matarazzo. For those of you who don't know her, she's trying to pick up some of those slack. But I'm in those departments all the time. I see what's going on. And on a $210 million operation, it is my opinion it's inadequate to meet the services. And you hit the nail on the head. We couldn't get the electronic budget book because he just couldn't get to it.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Thank you, Counselor Rotundo. Counselor Feldman.
Yes, thank you. I was going to say partially the same sentiment as Councilor Rotundo in the fact that consultants are cheaper. They are cheaper to do some of the work than it is to hire a full-time employee with pensions and benefits. And we've already cut this department. And I'm concerned that because of the state of our budget and our financial future of the city, the finance department is one area that we are going to need to rely heavily on for output in trying to right the ship. And one of my concerns with thinking of reducing this line item more, and I say more, is that because it's already been reduced, the actual in 2025 was over 17,000. The original budget for 2026 was 23,000, and this is now a reduction of almost 25% at 12,500 for a line item that we're now looking to fill the gap of losing a full-time equivalent in the finance office. And I just think this department is too important to strip it of all of its resources to be able to give us as citizens the services we need to get back on track financially. So that would be my big concern, because it already has been reduced significantly in this budget as a line item. And that was with having another full-time equivalent employee in that office. So I just think the demands of what we're asking for in terms of output, budget book being a perfect example, is just too great right now at this time to look to here to cut more because they've already cut so much. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Thank you, Counselor Feldman. Other comments from counselors on this one? All right, we have a motion and a second. This is the proposed amendment to line 53034, the reduction from $12,500 to $0. All those in favor? All those opposed? That fails 1-8. And then Counselor St. Hilaire, it sounded like you were still open to deferring to Counselor Houseman for some of his. And okay. Okay, thank you. And we'll definitely come back to you, Counselor St. Hilaire. I won't lose track of you. Counselor Houseman, let's go to you. And then Counselor Rotundo, it sounds like maybe we'll loop over to you and come back around. Okay.
I guess, in keeping with the sort of the progress that Councilor St. Hilaire has through his list, I want to jump back. I think we were at page 118, line 57812, is that correct? Did I get the right line in terms of what you were suggesting be eliminated? The mayor's.
Salary pool for exempt employees?
Yeah,
Yes, that's page 118.
Yeah.
Line number 57811.
1-1.
right. So I'd like to pick up that conversation by asking Councilor St. Hilaire a limited question, if I may, through you.
Yes.
You are suggesting, if I understand, that there should be no raises for department heads and other associated non-union members at all in this budget. Is that correct? Is that
I did suggest that, and we voted against that, but yes, that was what I suggested.
Right, okay. Oh, sorry. Do you want to repeat that?
Yeah, I'll just repeat, I did propose that and it was voted down, but yes, that was my intention.
Yeah, so although it may be, not in terms of the recipients, but in general, in terms of trying to send a message, somewhat symbolic, I would be willing to support a $20,000 reduction in this to send to our constituents a clear, unequivocal message that pain is being felt throughout the city. I recognize that as kind of a, I don't want it to seem as though it is a, by saying it's a relatively small amount, to suggest that this is sort of being petty in terms of making this motion. But I'm trying to establish a strong message to school committee members, to the teachers, unions, everyone across the board, that everyone has got to tighten their belt somewhat when it comes to adjustments in salary. I mean, I'm going to suggest when we get to it, as I mentioned, the budget analyst and the city council also be, subject to this kind of a move. So I guess for the purposes of discussion, I would make a motion that line 57811 be reduced by $20,000 and would welcome a second for discussion.
Second?
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion here? Councilor Sonia, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you to my colleague, Councilor Houseman. I'm just wondering how you arrived at that number, and I understand the point of, sending out a signal to residents that we're serious about acknowledging that we are in tough times and things ought to be tighter, but I am just sort of wondering how 20,000 came to be that number.
It's an entirely fair question, and I'll be straight up. It's not based upon any kind of calculation. It's based upon trying to arrive at a number that will still enable the mayor to provide raises to non-union members that he thinks is appropriate as a management decision. I think that's appropriate. I came across an inaugural statement by Mayor Scanlon early when he first became mayor, in which he talked about this very issue of providing support for his department heads. And he was very clear that it's appropriate to do this. And he was facing an $8 million deficit. So I think it's important we retain our talent. I think it's important that people be rewarded for their service and what we ask of them. And I think our department heads do a terrific job. So let me just say that the $20,000 is arbitrary in the sense that it's intended to try to send a message of significance of the situation that we face, while still providing ample opportunity for the mayor to still provide those, those increases that he thinks are appropriate. I mean, I reiterate, I don't think we should be giving raises that are in excess of Prop 2.5 as we go through our collective bargaining. I think it sends the wrong message. I mean, to Councilor Milady's example, maybe it's true that people in the private sector make more money than people in the government sector, but as a practical matter, everyone's tightening their belts right now, and I don't think it's too large of a reduction to, at the end of the day, make a difference in terms of retaining folks. So I'll just leave it at that for discussion.
And just one quick follow-up, Madam President, if that's all right. Your intention, Councilor Hausman, is to offer that we forego raises as a council later as part of your priorities tonight.
Yeah, let me actually ask Mr. Perry to come forward, because he and I had this conversation earlier specifically on this question and how that may be done, because I floated exactly that. So I'd like, for the benefit of the full council, to hear.
Sure, thank you, Councilor.
Mr. Perry, please, thank you.
So, thank you, Madam President. So a couple of years ago, we did a lot of work where we revamped city ordinances in terms of salaries for elected officials, specifically the mayor, the city council, and school committee. And what we did at that time, which was passed by this body, I don't think you were here at the time, Councilor, but it was passed by this body, was that every 2 years, in October of every 2 years, the budget analyst, who is supposed to be an independent person within the city, would come before the city council and make a recommendation on the salaries of those three entities, that being, again, the mayor, the city council, and the school committee. I did come before this body 2 years ago. I made various recommendations. My recollection is the council did not agree with my recommendation on the mayor, and they cut that, but they did agree on my recommendation for the school committee and the city council, which was a very small nominal amount of an increase. I did recommend more for the mayor because in my view at the time, he works full-time and all that stuff. So what will happen going forward right now, that sets the salary, then you appropriate the money here. So what happens here is this coming October, your budget analysts will have to come before you, but it'll be a little bit different this year because the mayor has a 4-year term, so there'll be no dialogue or conversation with regard to the mayor. But the concept is I will make, or whoever's in this role will make a budget, will make a recommendation on the salaries of both the city council and the school committee, but those salaries don't go into effect until the newly elected of individuals, which would be a year from that January, because it's a conflict of interest for city councilors to make decisions on their own salaries. So it's basically a forward-looking thing to avoid conflict of interest. So the bottom line to it, there is money in there right now, as already voted upon by this body a year ago, October, and we will address that again this coming October going forward. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Mr. Perry.
If I may follow up with Mr. Perry on this conversation?
Yeah.
So a couple of different points. One, sort of historical reference for those who were not in the council at the time. I voted for the salary increases for the city council at that point because the city council had not received a raise for 25 years. And I thought it's appropriate for the institution of the city council to receive what was in fact a pretty nominal raise. I don't recall the amount of the.
It's $500.
Yeah, $500. So not a lot. This was really, for me, more a matter of institutional support. No one runs for these positions for the money. But I would also add that, I've also called for a renegotiation, if it can be had, as to the 80% copay for city employees. That would also affect, if that's redone, that would also affect health insurance benefits that are taken by city councilors. So the idea here is that, yes, if we're really going to send the message we've been trying to, or at least I've been trying to, in a very different form, Councilor St. Hilaire has been trying to, about what we're facing in terms of the structural deficit, I think it's only right for the council to be living in that world as well. So that's a long answer to your question. If I may, one more question to Mr. Perry. I've acknowledged that on this line item of $50,000, that the $20,000 number I picked is arbitrary, intended to send a message without, structurally undermining that line item. Is there any, accounting or budgetary reason why then that cannot be a, if you will, arbitrary number to send a message without undermining it? Is there any impediment to doing that? Or is there, to put it a different way, would you suggest that there's some other way of approaching what I'm trying to do by addressing that line item?
That's a policy decision for you all to make there. It sounds to me like you're trying to send a message to the world here within the city of Beverly that, everyone has to share some pain. I'm hearing that anyways. I don't know how everybody else is. I don't think it's just you could pick any number you want. You can pick $1. I don't really have an answer for that, but it is a policy. The only thing I'd say is if you do reduce it by 20,000, which is fine, that's your decision. We're down to like 2.8% or something like that. It's not going to be 3%. It'll be a little bit less.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Perry, but just a point of order question or a point of clarification question before I go to Councilor St. Hilaire and then Councilor Spang. I just want to clarify my own understanding of what you're saying about the city council salaries, which I do know are set. I do know the ordinance process that we've undergone and the fact that the current city council does not vote on salary for the current city council. I've also voted against salary increases for the city council each time, so I'm not particularly concerned with weighing in one way or the other on that. Am I right in understanding that the way that that would be handled would be to review as the ordinance sets by October 31st for the upcoming city council?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just wanted to check my understanding. Thank you. Councilor St. Hilaire, let's go to you, and then Councilor Spang, please.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to thank Councilor Houseman for revisiting this line item and making his amendment motion. I think I agree with the message you're trying to send. I think the message I was trying to send would have been stronger, but certainly agree with the sentiment, so thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Spang.
Just very similar to yours. So I saw in the news that in some other communities, their city council voted to rescind raises to itself and to the mayor. That's not something that we're able to do tonight, is my understanding of what you just said.
Mr. Perry, please.
Well, this may involve the solicitor. She's got to be here somewhere, right? Where is she? Oh, there she is. My experience, but I defer to the solicitor here. It's a two-step process. You set the salary, and that's, the work that I would do and give you, right, and you set the salary. And then you have to appropriate, and I'm hoping the solicitor will weigh in here momentarily, but you then appropriate the salary. From my experience, everything is subject to appropriation, okay? I believe, I've seen it in other communities, but maybe the solicitor has a different view. My opinion, from my own experience, unless there's something that I don't know about, is that the city council, I believe, could cut the salaries of yourself to whatever you want, Again, you're setting the salary, then you're appropriating. There's two things there. So that's my experience, but I'm going to defer to the solicitor and see I'm curious what she has to say.
Thank you. Solicitor Mixon, thank you.
Again, we'll tag team the finance and legal side. Your salaries as well as the mayor's salaries are set by ordinance. If you were not going, or you wanted to change what that amount was, it would be an ordinance change. So therefore, 2 meetings, and you could not do it tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Spang, for that question. Any other discussion on this one? All right, we have a motion and a second. This is on the proposal to reduce line 57811 from, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
I guess what I want to ask you folks is this. I mentioned earlier that our collective bargaining agreements across the city are good, strong, and fair. And they run from 3 to above 4% in this coming year. And I also have to point out that depending on the contract and the union, there is significantly greater value in the overall contract than only the salary increase. With our department heads, they can't get paid overtime, and they work often well above 40 hours a week. They don't get things like stipends for education or credits earned or things like that, that many of the union contracts have. I would also point out that it doesn't feel this is the right year, the right budget to be making this kind of a move. There may be a budget year where union contracts are all, by law, subject to appropriation. If there's a year that we can't meet the contracts that we've negotiated, we can't appropriate enough money to meet them, that's probably the year that department heads and other non-union employees don't get a raise. This group of people don't have union protections. They don't get those kind of benefits that come with some contracts. We are collectively asking them to try to do most of the same with less this coming year. I also just have to point out a significant number of the department heads worked incredibly hard over the last several years to do reclassification work with two of our city unions, BMEA and then DPS, to ensure that we were competitive and that we were appropriately aligned throughout the region with other communities, and that our union employees in those departments are appropriately compensated. 3%. And the work that every one of these people do brings incredible value to this community. This is a great team. I don't think it's the right message to these people who we need and we want to keep here. They performed incredibly for this city. They delivered great services, great results for the people of this community, day in, day out, week in, month in, year in and out. I don't agree at all with this proposal. I respectfully request that you vote it down.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other discussion from the council on this one? There's a motion and a second. This is the proposal to reduce line 57811 from $150,000 to $130,000. All those in favor? All those opposed? That fails 4-5. Councilor Hostman, we'll go back to you.
Yeah, I would make a motion that the city council budget, it's at page 12, line 51106, which is the budget analyst position, be reduced by $20,000 to $59,869.75. I've had an opportunity to discuss this matter with Mr. Perry, and I'd welcome his welcome at the podium at such point that someone would like him to talk about this.
Before we do that, I did hear a second from Councilor Rotundo. Thank you. Could you repeat the line item and the specific amounts that you're proposing, Councilor Hostman?
Yeah, so we're looking at page 12, and the line item, if I have it right, is 51106. The amount presently is $79,000, and I'm proposing to cut it by $20,000 to $59,000 and change.
59,000 and change, did you just say? What's the change?
The change is $869.75.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure I can read it with the change when I say what the proposal is. So there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this? Or would people like to hear from Mr. Perry first? Councilor Sonia.
Just real quick, just based on this being, looks like sort of governed by the charter, right? The charter says that this line shall never be less than half the amount provided for the office of the finance director. I don't know if there's, are we allowed to do this, basically? Yeah, I'm not sure.
Thank you, Counselor Sonia, great question. I see Mr. Perry is up there, Solicitor Olmixon, it seems like one we might want you up there for too.
I think, Madam President, there's one time I and the city solicitor, I think, are going to be on the same side. Let's hope. Just some quick information, some background on this, and then the solicitor will weigh in, I think. I've been with you for 10 years now. This position was established like about 30 years ago when the city got itself in a lot of financial trouble back at the time because the councilors who were obviously not trained in municipal finance weren't quite sure what was coming at them and things built up. So the position was established back 30 years ago with the charter at that time to assist the city council so they never get into another situation that occurred 30 years ago. That said, the position was established. This came up in a lot of conversations with the solicitor's predecessor when we were doing all the work on the city charter 2 or 3 years ago. I was heavily involved with that. The intent back then was, and council is correct, this role doesn't always make a lot of friends, okay? You have to say things that people don't want to hear. And one of the concerns was that, as you all know, the mayor establishes the budget, and there was concern that future mayors may cut it and get eliminated. So they put language in there that it had to be half of the finance director's job as Councilor Sonia, and that is basically what has occurred over my entire tenure here. That said, it talks about salary. I am not a salary employee. I am a per diem employee with no benefits. I don't get health insurance or anything like that. Well, this position doesn't get that. But that said, I have historically never billed the city for the work that I do anywhere near the appropriation of the half of the appropriation. And I've always bothered me. So through the entire spring, I've had conversation with several of the councilors about this very issue because I'm trying to help do what my own due diligence here to try to get you, and I never rise, as you know, on policy. This is a little bit policy, but this time I guess it involves the position that I'm in. So that said, I had a long conversation with Councilor Houseman and a few others on this too. I can easily make sure that this will work. I would never bill for the amount of money, I don't think, for the $59,000. I won't even get to that based on, I got enough tenure here to understand what I think I have to do to get the job done. And in discussions with the solicitor, and she'll rise here, we believe it's legal, and she'll kind of advise you on that. But the bottom line, given the circumstances the city is facing, I would advise you to do this. It'll work. I'll make it work as long as I'm in this role. And the only other thing I'll add, it's my opinion, and the solicitor can weigh in, even though if you reduce, let's say you decide to reduce it by $20,000, next year the mayor would still, per the charter, in my interpretation, again, I'll defer to the solicitor, the mayor would still have to appropriate half of the finance director's salary next year as well, and you can cut it again if you so desire, whatever you want to do. So I think it gives you flexibility. It sends I know the Councilor Houseman has talked to me a lot about sending a message out there that we all have to share in the pain in this stuff. I think this is a good idea, and that said, I would advocate that you support the council's position, and I'll defer to the solicitor.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Thank you, Solicitor Oldmixon.
Thank you. So you are correct. The charter says if the budget management analyst is an employee, the salary for the position shall never be less than 50% of the amount provided for the Office of Finance Director. However, as Mr. Perry stated, he's an employee, but he's not on salary. He's on per diem. His per diem rate, if it was to be a salary, is more than the 50% threshold. So he's just indicating to you that he does not need as much appropriated in order to provide the services that he does to you. So I would say that you still fall within the requirements of the charter.
Thank you, Solicitor. Councilor Spang.
Thank you, Madam President. I guess my one question or thing that I'm thinking about with regards to this is we've talked a lot about separating the position from the person. And so with all respect to Mr. Perry, I understand that he's able to manage this job and the workload for less hours, but if something were to happen to him and someone else was in this position, I just want to make sure that I think you can reduce a lot of redundancies. You've obviously have a wealth of experience in municipal finance. So that's my thought.
Now, that's a great question. I thought about that myself, Counselor. I'm a budget analyst. Whoever takes it in the future will be a budget analyst. Budget analysts don't deficit spend. So I can almost guarantee you from being in this business, Mr. Yale said 40 years. Believe it or not, it's 50 years. I'm definitely aging myself here. But that said, I'm very confident if somebody else is in the position, that's a great question, that that individual will live within the line item that you decide to appropriate tonight. And I would have confidence, and I think you should have confidence in that as well.
Thank you, Counselor Spang. Counselor Sonia.
So, just a clarifying question around Counselor Spang's point. I think this was just mentioned. We'd be voting to do this year, but next year, Brian's salary will be whatever it is, and the line item will initially be the 50% again, right? Okay, that's my problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Sonia. Counselor Houseman.
That was the point I was going to make. This is not a binding decision on any future budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this one? All right, we have a motion and a second. This is the proposal to reduce the line 51106 from $79,869.75 to $59,869.75. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that carries 9-0. Counselor Houseman, back to you.
Thank you, Council President. I am all set.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Rotundo, we'll go to you, and then Counselor St. Hilaire will make sure we come back.
Since Councilor Hausman took my one other, which was the budget analyst, I only have one other one that I do want to propose.
Please.
And it's a small, but it really is, I guess, trying to find the significance to it. With my proposals, I always want to have a meaningful reason of doing it, but it's on page 33. 51186 is the mail messenger position. I know it's been reduced, but the reality of it is maybe I don't know enough where City Hall is transitioning. I don't know exactly what the position will be doing at that point. It's $7,000. I would be looking to reduce it to 0. And maybe I could be proven wrong, but like I said, from my angle, I'm looking at it as we're transitioning out for the next 18 months to 2 years. I don't know exactly what the mail messenger would be doing at that point, because from my understanding, maybe, there we go, Mr. Ailes will tell us. Thank you.
Thank you, and before we have Mr. Ailes jump in, is there a second on this motion? Thank you. Mr. Ailes, thank you.
Thank you. That particular line item, you're correct in that the mail messenger has vacated the role. We've tried to think creatively on the ways we can still support those functions within City Hall, because there is a need to receive deliveries. There is a need to, allocate out the mail as it comes in, interoffice memos, things of that nature, restock paper, things like that. And so we're looking to distribute some of those functions to existing BMEA members. We still haven't gotten the ink dry on the plan, but that is the intended purpose of that additional money, to be able to compensate employees for their added work that isn't currently in their job descriptions.
Just for a point of clarity. So you're looking to stipend existing employees to share the work. So in essence.
Yes.
And can you just remind me the position when it was originally, was it a budgeted full-time position? I know it's been reduced over the years, but was it originally budgeted full-time with benefits?
When I began, so 13 years ago, it was a part-time at that point. When it became vacant, we reconstituted it with some additional building maintenance functions, and we hired someone full-time. When that person moved on to a different role in the city, we recalibrated it back to a part-time and removed out those functions again. So it most recently has been a part-time position, unbenefited.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other discussion on this one? There's a motion and a second. This is the proposal to reduce line 51186 from $7,000 to $0. All those in favor? All those opposed? That carries 5-4. Counselor Rotundo, that was it, okay. Counselor St. Hilaire.
Thank you, Madam President. I only have a couple more. I would like to go to line 53024, Health Department Consultant, 27,500. I would like to make a motion to reduce that to 0. Similar to my line items earlier, looking at consultant lines, I appreciate the fact that, you know, we can pick up some work with consultants. Consultants are in business to make money. They charge a lot of money. We need to look at figuring out how to make do with less. We've kind of started that approach, but I think we need to go all the way, and so I would reduce this to 0. 53024.
Thank you. Is there a second on this one? Thank you, Counselor Feldman. Is there any discussion on this? Oh, Mr. Ailes.
Wanted to add the perspective on that particular line item. That's actually a revenue-generating line item, so it actually brings in more revenue through billings of biohazard inspections than it costs. So if you eliminate it, we would need to actually take even more than that amount out of the revenue stream, and so it would be a net loss to the budget.
Counselor St. Hilaire, I just wanted to clarify that I heard you right. Is it line 53034 at the top of? 34? Yeah. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I had that written correctly here. Thank you, Mr. Ailes. Is there any further discussion on this one? Okay, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor? All those opposed? That fails 1-8. Counselor St. Hilaire, we'll go back over to you.
Yes, I have another one, line in 53034, Planning Department. That doesn't sound right.
No, that was just.
There's a Planning Department consultant line item for 17,500. Let me find it, I'm sorry. Thank you. It does say 53034, line, page 39. I'd like to make a motion that we reduce that from 17,500 to 0.
Is there a second? Thank you, Counselor Rotundo. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this one? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Nguyen, did you want to have a chance to weigh in on this? You're entitled to move.
Yes, Darlene, and thank you. We have significantly reduced this budget line item over time. It used to be in the around 60 to 50,000. As I did mention in my budget presentation, we get a lot of grants. We try to get grants when we do, sorry, I have a hard time readers and looking at you. We try to get grants to do longer term projects and things like that. We often in times need a small match to do that grant. We also have applied for grants for things like the recreational trail signage program, other trail work for the Open Space Committee. There's some signage, historic preservation signage projects that we've been looking to do. Really small money, but we often need a very small match to go with it, which is why I kept just a little bit of money in this budget line. I also have 5,000 of it is for our membership in the, let me just verify. I believe, yeah, 5,000 of it is our North Shore Alliance for Economic Development membership, for which the mayor happens to be the chair of that commission right now. It's a commission that we work with our neighboring communities to help try to come up with economic development solutions that support the region in terms of business growth and job growth and workforce growth. The other small amount, I also use this money for things like surveys. I'm doing a survey right now for the Family Dollar. That costs $5,000. It's likely that there may be, because it is a registered land, I might have about $3,000 more of expenses next fiscal year for that same project. So there's not really a lot of flexibility in here. I have cut it down significantly, and I would like to retain a little bit of it to have some flexibility to anticipate some of those projects that inevitably do come. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nguyen. Councilor Houseman, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Our planning department is kind of like below skeleton level in terms of staffing. Consultants, as been mentioned earlier this evening when we talked about consultant in a different department, help leverage the work of the staff in a way that does not involve health benefits and so forth. Our planning department is terrifically busy simply providing support to the many boards and commissions that we have in this city that help this city run, and those are staffed by volunteers. I don't see any value added in the face of what we're dealing with in terms of budget challenges. I see no value added in trying to cut this particular line item. I think quite the contrary, it's only going to diminish the effectiveness in a unacceptable way of the services that the planning department already provides. So I will not be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councilor. Is there other discussion on this from members of the council? Councilor St. Hilaire.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Ms. Nguyen for her comments, and I appreciate, the desire for flexibility, right? We all want flexibility, and I think this is just a year where we don't really have flexibility. And so I would say we need to accept the consequences of cutting something like this, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other discussion from the council on this one? All right, there's a motion and a second. This is on 53034, but within the planning department. This is the proposal to reduce that line from $17,500 to $0. All those in favor? All those opposed? That fails 1-8. Councilor St. Hilaire, anything else that you had on your
I have no
list?
more amendments, but I do have one comment, if that's okay.
It is, of course.
I just wanted to say, thank you to everyone for considering the amendments I brought forward tonight. I recognize that some of them are in the minutia. My goal tonight was really more in the totality of these cuts, which was designed to reduce over $700,000 in spending in the budget, combined with what I think is the right move, which would be to cancel City Hall. That could have been $2.7 million. We reduced it by $85,000 by my estimates, which it's more than I think we've ever done when I've been on the council, so I appreciate that. I think in the grand totality, it doesn't move the needle a whole lot, but I think it does start to send the right message. And I do hope that we can have more robust discussions moving forward. I know there's a committee being formed to look at revenue generating ideas. I would suggest that committee meet in the public with BevCam with robust discussion, because I think there is a lot of interest in our financial challenges as a city with residents, and we need to do better moving forward.
Thank you, Councilor St. Hilaire. So, councilors, I did say that at the end, we would circle back if there were councilors who had statements that they wanted to make. We have worked, I believe, any other councilors, I'm sorry, I did sort of take a little bit of a poll while we came back from recess, but did anybody else have a proposed amendment that they hope to offer? I'm not trying to cut you off if you did. Okay. Yes, before we go to brief comments, if it's okay, I just wanted to recap for folks who were trying to follow. or to wonder where we are with the main motion now, it will include 4 of the amendments that did carry. And so just as a reminder, when we vote on the main motion, it will include the reduction that was $13,500 to $10,000 reduction in line 51891. It will include the reduction from $62,620 to 0 in line 51141. It will include the reduction in line 51106 from $59,869.75 to $59,869.75. And it will include the reduction in line 51186 from 7,000 to 0. So those are the 4 that carried. I just wanted to offer that recap for folks who are following. And for counselors, I know you've all been taking good notes, but if it's helpful, those are the 4 that the main motion now includes. Counselor Hausman, we'll go to you, and then if other counselors have comments, I'd love to give us all the chance to say those.
I'll be very brief. I'm very troubled by both some of the votes I took tonight and some of the advocacy that I've stated tonight, troubled in the sense that it is difficult. It is painful. I take no pleasure in trying to send the message that I've been trying to send throughout the course of this month. Because I think next year is going to be so much harder. And so I hope to the listening public that they hear loud and clear that message, that they will try to inform themselves and engage. And just to the city staff that we have, I just want to say how important the work you do and how much I appreciate that work. So I want to thank all of you for that while I sit up here and try to be the skunk at the garden party, if you will, in attempt to be really, 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 really clear to the public and to everyone else who works in the city that we've got a real problem on our hands and we have no choice because the math, won't change. We've all got to pull together. I think we can do it, but it's going to be hard. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hausman. So I've been seeing councillors' hands the order that I have seen you, and I can still add other councillors. Councillor Sonia, Spang, Milady, Feldman. And anyone else can still jump in.
Thank you, Madam President, and apologies in advance for a little grandstanding, but I appreciate being able to take part in this process. And so I want to begin with gratitude and say thank you to my colleagues on this council, including Mr. St. Hilaire, who helped move the discussion forward in a lot of, I think, constructive ways and set a marker for, where we'll probably be next year. To our colleagues on the school committee, to the professionals at City Hall, and to everyone, Mr. Ailes, Mr. Perry, Solicitor Oldmixon, who worked long hours to answer our questions throughout this process, provide resources, and give us the information we needed to move forward. Most of all, thank you to the residents who give us the opportunity to serve and who keep showing up to build a better community together. This is the most important thing this council does every year. The fiscal year budget is the clearest statement we make about our values, our priorities, and the kind of community we are trying to build together. Because it matters so much, we should always be willing to make this and every government process better by getting creative, by bringing more residents into the process and rebuilding trust that people are heard even when we disagree. That work is urgent as we head into, as Councillor Hausman alluded to, the difficult budget years ahead. We'll face hard choices and we will not always agree. But if we begin from the belief that every person has something to contribute, disagreement can become part of building something stronger together. A lot of my thinking and philosophy about local government is tempered by some of the work I did during my doctoral studies. I went to a place far more divided than Beverly could ever be. It's a place called Mostar in Bosnia. And it's a city still marked by the scars of war. There I met a young server who worked for her father's small restaurant. She was proud of her hometown, excited to meet people, full of life. But when politics came up, she said she'd never voted because nothing would ever change. What stayed with me then, and what I carry into this role, is the reminder that trust has to be built and then rebuilt over and over again, especially when people have been given reasons to doubt. Cynicism has never helped anybody. It will not help our schools excel. It will not pave roads. It will not protect coastlines, build businesses, support families, or sustain a community willing to fight for its neighbors. What does help is people showing up, believing their voices matter, and choosing to work together. That's the spirit in which I have and will continue to engage this process and with the role and with public service more broadly. At its best, public service invites people in, explains trade-offs honestly, listens with humility, and reminds us that the work of community is shared work. So as we close this budget process, I'm grateful for the work that has been done by this council and by many others, and am hopeful still about the work ahead. If we make room for more voices, choose cooperation over division, and keep faith with one another, there's very little that we cannot accomplish. Our strength is not in any single voice, but in the course we create when we act together, especially in the face of challenges. Emerson said simply, we need each other, and that the glory of friendship is not the outstretched hand, but the spiritual inspiration that comes when you discover that someone else believes in you. I believe in Beverly, its people, and I'm excited by the work ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sonia. We'll go to Councillor Spang next, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Beverly's not alone in the financial challenges of this and future budget years. It's facing almost every municipality within the state of Massachusetts at the same time. And I just want to echo the recognition for the work that our city and school employees do every day in a challenging economy. Thank you for your service to our community. I wish this budget could fully fund all of our departments to the level that we would like to see that happen, but it can't. So I recognize the need that we have to adopt a budget tonight so that the city does not shut down on July 1st. And I will be voting in favor of adopting this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spang. Councillor Milady.
Thank you, Madam President. Looking back at this process, it's been a wonderful opportunity to do some reflection on my own part and the role that I have played in the city, and also the role that I would like to play in the city. Changing is hard because it means you probably should have changed earlier. It means you did and said things, as it turns out, were possibly based on incorrect beliefs. For years during my time on the school committee, I was a strong advocate for funding our schools. In budget planning sessions, subcommittee meetings, meetings of the whole, and regular meetings, I consistently spoke out for the needs for more money for our schools. One of my favorite lessons to teach is on President George Washington's farewell address. Washington, who was finishing his second term, knew his health was in decline, and he wanted to leave valuable lessons to the people in the country that he had spent decades in service to. It's a truly beautiful document where the president essentially gives some advice. He covered topics ranging from the danger of political parties and foreign alliances to the importance of national unity. He also emphasized the importance of public education. In the address, he called public education a priority, saying, promote then, as an object of primary importance, institutions for their general diffusion of knowledge. In proportion as the structure of a government gives force to public opinion, it is essential that public opinion should be enlightened. In other words, strong schools are vital to democracy. It really is an incredibly beautiful sentiment. So looking back at my time on the committee, I really wish I had done more. As noble as his advocacy may have been, I should have been doing more. We have known for years that financial hardships were heading this way. Mr. Ailes, Mr. Perry, Councilor Feldman, and many others have spoken about looming deficits at numerous meetings. These past few weeks, I wonder if they had felt like Cassandra in Greek mythology. She was gifted the power of prophecy, but cursed and nobody would listen to her. Through their work on financial forecasts, they have spoken of this looming deficit. And with respect to Councilor Houseman, who has said we have a math problem, I'm going to respectfully disagree. That as a community, and myself especially, the problem isn't math. We have a courage problem. Myself, I lamented a state budgeting process that did not give more to local aid, but I voted for state representatives and state officials who consistently did nothing to address the problem. I pushed for more money for our schools, but never addressed the real source of the problem, the confines that we live in under Prop 2.5. And all the time I've served on the school committee, I should have done a better job at advocating for an override. I should have reached out to our partners in the community and on the city council to address the cliff that was before us, but I did not. And for that, I'm sorry. We knew this was coming, and I stayed silent for too long. As a wise woman once said, Band-Aids don't fix bullet holes. And for too long, in my opinion, we as a community have been attempting to do just that. And I just want to take a meta moment right here and hope that I don't sound like a Monday morning quarterback to people who have worked much longer and harder on this issue. My intention is not to disparage anybody here, any elected official, past or present. In my heart, I know how much you care about our city, about our residents, and about our children. But I wanted to be on the record and state that I could have done more. The deficit has been presented very matter-of-factly with no emotion or bias, and rightfully so. My friend Lauren, who's a math teacher, says math doesn't care. While this is true, there's also been a lack of ownership for the hole that we are in. Another thing that is true is something that Pope Francis once said, when no one is to blame, everyone is to blame. So I feel there is a need to own up to the part that I have played. Truth may be vital. Without love, it's unbearable. I love it here. I want to be sure that my actions can help make our city bearable and better. Sister Alice taught me in 5th grade, when you put your name on something, make sure you believe in it. So for that reason, I cannot vote in favor of this budget. I understand it follows along the lines of best practice. But I grew up with parents who loved us dearly, and they worked very hard, but they did not have the luxury of living their lives within financial best practice. They had to put grocery bills on credit cards, mortgage payments were late, and hell, a car or two was seized by the bank. Best practice was an unachievable goal for them. They lived in a reality where you needed to do whatever you could do just to get by. The financial decisions that they made were based out of love, and that's something that they did that probably no economist would agree with. So with them in mind, I can't in good conscience support this budget. The budget I would support is one that has our fire and police department staffed at the level recommended by federal guidelines. The budget that I would support ensures that our library doesn't risk losing its accreditation and has our senior center and other departments continuing to do more with less. The budget I would support does not make our schools and our unions a scapegoat for rising costs. I'm aware that that budget does not exist yet, and I'm also aware that we can't just will it into existence. The only way for this to make it happen is for us to work together. President Kennedy once said, our problems are man-made, therefore they can be solved by any man. We need to switch our mindset on how much money goes into reserves, on how we are willing to stop talking about the problems, about the train coming down the road, and be willing to take some serious, drastic actions. And I want to take a special moment to point out and recognize the hard work of Councilor Feldman, your leadership, and you taking on the formation of a deficit reduction committee. You've already hit the ground running and sharing information with other committee members as they're gearing up for their work. It's important to express gratitude, which is why I wanted to express mine towards the hard work you've done. Continuing with this gratitude to all my fellow counselors, the patience you've shown me as I've asked you questions that range in different varies of stupidity and, so you said, financial ignorance. To the department heads, your passion and service, the way you stick up for your staff, what you provide for us is essential. You're a reminder to us all that you look out for all of our residents. There's much work to be done, and I'm looking forward to continuing to roll up my sleeves. Thank you very much. Time's up.
Thank you very much, Councilor Milady. Councilor Feldman, please.
Yes, thank you. I wasn't going to say anything, but I really, I feel the need to really thank a lot of people. This was my first year as chair of finance and property, and it was kind of a baptism by fire kind of year with the amount of work we had before us. And I'm really grateful for the robust discussion we had as counselors about really looking at all of the line items and the tough budget we had before us. And I really do value all of the opinions we're able to bring to the public via BevCam, regardless of disagreeing. You know, Councilor St. Hilaire, you're the Scalia to my Ginsburg. And so I really value that, that type of effort to show the community we are consciously thinking of these choices and taking everyone's opinion into consideration. It's absolutely always taken into consideration in my deliberations and thought process. And echoing what Councilor Hausman said, I took no pleasure in the votes that for the cuts that I supported tonight. It is really hard, especially since the people in this room, you know, we're putting dollar signs on people is what it really comes down to. And regardless of whether the public is hearing, you know, tax dollars out, we're just paying too much in taxes, it's translating into dollars into investing in people in our community that are working and doing the services and the work that needs to be done for the public. And I value everyone in this room tonight, and I really appreciate working with all of you and all the hard work that all of the department heads and all of your staff have done in making the cuts, the first line of cuts yourself, and then getting up here to then receive another round of cuts from us. It just, it was not great, but it was, you know, it needs to happen, and we need to have more transparency in how these type of cuts affect the public. And that brings me to thanking the public, because this was the first year that at least that since I've been on council, that I saw such a level of engagement from the public in terms of asking great questions of us, pushing us to do better as counselors and as your representatives to answer those questions and to look into those line items, because I appreciate that. And I think my fellow counselors would say the same, that type of constituent and public engagement in helping us to answer some of those questions for them. It's just so important, and it shows people care. People care about this community, and everyone showed it. Everyone in City Hall, from all of the department heads showed it, all of us here showed it, and the public really showed it. They care about this community and the decisions we're making. And I really hope that level of engagement and critical decision-making and questioning continues into the future, beyond when we're in crisis. It would be great if this was a peacetime engagement level, because then we don't get to crisis level. If we stay engaged through the good times, that's how we don't get to the bad times. And so I'm really hoping that we can continue with this, and people can continue to ask good questions, and I know that we will continue to try and work hard for the public, and so will everyone, that all the departments, all the services here in the city that we have tonight. So I really appreciate everyone that's been part of this process. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Feldman, sorry, I was got stuck for some reason. Councilor Feldman. Were there any other councilors who wish to be able to comment before we are getting towards the vote? Given that, Vice President St. Hilaire, I wonder if you'd be willing to switch with me so that I might be able to say something. And then again, for folks who were here, Vice President St. Hilaire will switch until after this vote is called for. So thank you, Vice President St. Hilaire, for switching with me so that it would allow me the opportunity to speak, not as the council president, but as a member of the council. And of course, as we all do, as also a member of this community, a city of Beverly neighbors and friends, which we are together. So it's no secret that fiscal year '27 will be a challenging one. We've been talking about it. You heard it many times this evening. You've heard it many times throughout the budget process. We've been forecasting it as a city since our financial forecasting processes unfolded months before this spring budget season that we are rounding out here at the end of June. And that same forecasting process tells us that FY28 is projected to be more challenging still. And we, like every municipality in this Commonwealth, as Councillor Spang has already alluded to, are grappling with a very real and very challenging structural deficit. The kind that is caused by expenses that rise at a rate more rapid than the corresponding increase in revenues. And municipalities face challenges like this at this present moment because we know and we can understand from our own household budgets that the cost of everything, from health insurance to goods and services to gas for our vehicles to supplies for construction or repair projects, the cost for everything is rising. And in our case, in our city, our revenues, the majority of which for local cities and towns come from property taxes, are capped at an aggregate 2.5% levy limit. And this 2.5% year-over-year cap is a good thing in many ways in terms of protection for residents. And it also presents a challenge. It's a challenge that calls us to think and work together creatively. And I believe that we've seen some of that work already unfolding from the time that department heads and the mayor's team began working on a budget that came to us with cuts already proposed, to the work that's happened over the course of this month, to the work that happened this evening, to the work that is yet to happen, to the work that our school committee did in their budget process, to the advocacy that they offered and showed, and the work that will continue with them as well. This is a challenge that calls us to ask, as the superintendent said during his budget presentation, what are we prepared to do? What are we prepared to do together for this community that we love? It's a challenge that demands critical thinking, hard work, and the willingness to make hard decisions. Much of that has already been on display during this year's budget process, including the receipt of a proposed budget that came to us with cuts across city departments averaging 10 to 20% per department, and with the questions that councilors have asked since, in the conversations we've had together and with residents, and in the conversations, proposed cuts, and votes that we took this evening. Every one of the cuts, whether in the proposed budget or made this evening, or proposed this evening, can be traced to real people, to friends, to neighbors, to colleagues in this city providing some kind of service, which in turn can be traced to an impact on the real lives of folks in this city. And that reality calls us to bring the very best of ourselves to this process, because no decision that we make then is one that should be made lightly. And I want to thank my fellow councilors because I believe we undertook the seriousness of that conversation with the weight that it is due. I also want to thank my fellow councilors for a budget season in which I believe that it was evident that we were invested in doing the hard work, and we know that we must remain invested. And a season when we could talk together about things that were hard and about things about which we do not agree. I also want to thank our school committee colleagues for their work and for their advocacy. Thank the mayor and his team for their work bringing forward the budget. To thank all of our city staff and our school employees for the work that they do every single day for people in this community. And I'd like to especially take a moment to thank Mr. Ailes and Mr. Perry, who have made themselves available for countless hours during all of the Finance and Property Subcommittee meetings, and certainly outside of those meetings fielding questions, I'm sure, as well. The truth is, making cuts, and those that were hard this year will be harder next year if we cannot find a way to shift the structural part of this structural deficit. Cuts alone won't solve this particular problem. It's a piece of the solution, but when a municipality is dealing with a budget, and this is not a fault of this municipality, this is a fact of a system that is in the business of providing services, when 90% of a budget comes from fixed costs, like salaries or contractual obligations for hardworking people who provide real and needed services to all who live in the city, I think we don't do anybody any favors to pretend we could just cut our way out of this issue. In the movie The American President, which came out in 1995, but whose themes have held up remarkably well, or depressingly well, depending on how you feel, knowing that the big issues characters in the film were trying to tackle were climate change and reducing its impact, and enacting common sense gun legislation. So depending on how you feel, that movie could have come out probably yesterday. In one scene, Michael Douglas, who plays the fictional President Andrew Shepard, says when confronting some of the serious challenges of their moment, that what is to be avoided are two things into which we as humans sometimes too easily fall when trying to tackle a problem together: making one another afraid of it and telling others who's to blame for it. His point being that in the face of serious challenges, we sometimes fall into a trap of avoiding the serious work by pointing fingers at each other, or becoming afraid or making others afraid or angry, falling into traps like catastrophizing or placing blame rather than seeking collaborative and creative solutions that will never get us where we want to be together. If where we want to be together is to arrive at a solution that does the most good for the most people. And at least for me, I believe that's what the work of municipal governance is supposed to be about. This is not to say that it's not important to talk about the seriousness of the issue, but perhaps the challenge of our moment and all our moments together ahead are, how do we want to continue to tackle fiscal year 27 and the one beyond it? How do we want to work collaboratively together to move towards creative solutions where we don't fall into those traps of pointing fingers at each other and forgetting that we need to work together to find a solution? How do we want to do the most good for our community, for our schools, for our neighbors, for our roads, for our health department, for our public safety, for our seniors, for every person in this city whose lives are touched by the services that we provide? Which brings us back to the question of what are we each prepared to do? So for my part, I am prepared to stay in the mix. I am prepared to keep having the hard and frank conversations together, to digging deep, to studying the issues before us fully and deeply, and thinking about them seriously, trying to gather all the information possible before arriving at my decision or my vote. I recognize that in a city of 42,000 people, that won't mean that everyone will always agree with my decision or my vote, any more than the 9 of us up here always will agree. But I hope that what we can agree to is that this work demands our best effort to problem solve, to provide the best services for residents while also striving to protect vulnerable folks and mitigate financial burdens on those whose household budgets are also feeling profound strain, to offer the best, fully funded, and strongest schools that we can for our children, to be courageous in our leadership, even when that means explaining facts that might be hard to hear or taking a difficult vote. And for all of us who call Beverly home, perhaps the moment also calls upon us to resist the temptation to see one another as the problem and to work together toward real and meaningful creative solutions. Do I wish this budget had more in it? Yes, I do. I wish it included the full critical needs budget for which our school committee advocated and which our superintendent reminded us when he was here with us. It doesn't even get to the nice to haves. It strives to bring us to meet the need to haves. I wish it included the full safety and training officer for our fire department, rather than our chief and firefighters coming up with a plan to cover more bases and all the critical training with one fewer team member. I wish it could cover all of the needs of our police department so that the chief and his team could have what they need to help keep us safe. I wish it could cover with ease all the needs of our planning department, including the need for public transportation for our seniors and some of the most vulnerable folks in the city who relied on the CATA bus. Although I do want to note with great appreciation the work being done right now by many folks in city departments to strive to create a local public transportation solution for this critical need. I wish that this budget could easily cover the full needs of all of our community services, from our public library to our parks and recreation, to our senior services, to our veterans, our health department, and more. I wish it could ensure full staffing of our clerk's office to help them juggle the critically important needs at election time, as well as keeping up with the day-to-day reporting and public-facing work of their office. And after tonight, I wish it could include the 0.034% that was proposed out of this entire budget for the city-side DEIB work to help folks who are vulnerable and marginalized continue to have a spot, a person, an advocate, a place to go and know that they are seen and valued, heard and safe in this community. And given that it does not, I am committed to continuing to be a voice to continue to advocate for us to move in that direction. The list could go on and on, filled with my wishes and likely your wishes too, and likely the wishes of everybody here in this room, whether they work for this city, serve this city as an elected official, or just live in or love this city. And so, The optimist in me says that we have to hold fast to holding all of these things and more before us so we know the goal to which we are working always. And the optimist in me says that we can do that while acknowledging the seriousness of our times, while making the hard decisions to make cuts and to think about new revenue streams, and that we can do it together without turning on each other in fear or resorting to placing blame. There's some pessimist in me, as in all of us, but I'm trying not to let her win the day. Because the realist in me knows that it will take serious work for us to get there, but that the work is well worth it. And so tonight I am casting my vote for this budget as amended, recognizing, as Councillor Spang noted, we have a legal responsibility to have a budget by the end of June so that our city can continue to function and provide those services. Even as I hold out the hope that those needs, those wishes, those hopes, those things that we hold close, that are not able to be in this budget this year are things that we can work toward yet. And so I'm doing this, casting the vote tonight with a healthy dose of optimism still and hope for all the work that lies ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Any other questions or comments? Okay, colleagues, I think we have two votes tonight. First, I would entertain a motion to approve Order 151, which is the mayor's proposed FY27 budget as amended tonight. Okay, any comments or discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes 5-4. Ms. Kent, I believe we have another vote we need to take. Is that correct? Yes. Colleagues, I would entertain a motion to approve the Water Enterprise Fund appropriation at $6,567,369, inclusive of a transfer of retained earnings of $395,369 in a unit rate of 4.42. Mr. Ailes, help me out here.
Yeah, I think there was probably a miscommunication here. I think my intended comment to the clerk on that vote was to ensure that the council was aware in their vote that they are also approving the enterprise funds. And as part of those enterprise fund budgets, there are two components that require affirmative vote, which are the rates for water, the rate for sewer, as well as the retained earning transfers that help support those expenditure budgets. And that's for all the enterprise funds. So the motion before was on the full order, which included those. So I think as long as the record shows that you're all aware that, as noted in the vote sheet, the rate for the water will be 442, the rate for the sewer will be 776, and all the noted transfer of retained earnings for each of the enterprise funds will be transferred upon that vote. That's really, we wanted to show us that the record had that. Are you looking for a specific?
Mr. Perry, you look quizzical.
Oh, yeah. So, I think what I'm guessing, I didn't know any of this was coming here, and I talked to the council president about this. It sounds like he's trying to be informational in nature, which is, well, I'm fine with that, but the city council, simply, you've done this the last 3 or 4 years, you make a motion to adopt the mayor's budget as amended, which would incorporate all the things he just talked about. It's everything, it's the entire package.
So we just did that. Do we need to do anything else?
I withdraw the motion.
Good work.
I don't think you do. I don't think you do, if you're okay with it too.
I don't think they have to, no. I would say, Mr. Vice President, that in my opinion, unless someone has something different from my years of experience, the fact that you made a motion to approve the mayor's budget as amended, it was passed 5-4, if I'm not mistaken, I think you've completed your task. You now have a FY27 budget, in my opinion.
Okay. Ms. Olmixon, would you like to weigh in on that at all? No? Okay. Okay, I think, Madam President, you want to take back the helm here before I screw things up further?
Thank you very much, Vice President St. Hilaire. So, councilors, thank you very much. We do have one additional meeting on Thursday of this week. So we'll see everyone back here. That's for 3 public hearings that we need to take care of before the summer recess. And so, as well as a motion to approve the warrant for the election so that our elections can happen in a timely fashion as required. So we'll see everyone back here. Thank you very much to everyone for joining us this evening. Thanks to those who are joining us on BevCam. Yes. Okay, yep. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Have a good night.